Welcome back to the PFF NFL show, here for the grades release show for Week 7 in the NFL. Trevor, Sikkema, Dalton, Wasserman. Got a little Chris Collinsworth, Army guy, football guy, whatever that is. So it's the three of us. We're talking about every single game that we have here in the NFL slate that we saw in Week 7, minus, of course, the Monday night doubleheader that we have coming up. We'll probably mention that a little bit. But what we're here to do is give you the top 5 grades for every single team and every single game, give you the stats that told the story, some most impressive, some most disappointing. Basically, just chat about football for the next 2.5 hours. Appreciate everybody joining us. Dalton, how we doing, my friend?
Had a long weekend. We were in New York on Thursday and Friday. Went to Game 4 of Mets-Dodgers, which was tough for the
condolences, by the way.
Tough for the home crowd. It's a great run. Can't lie about that. It was a great run. And then Saturday, Max and I went to Louisville for Louisville-Miami. Cam Ward tearing up another defense up there in Louisville. Just looks incredible in person. I mean, I tell you, it's just he's going to be a lot of fun to talk about for the next 6 months or so. And wherever he ends up, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Now you're speaking my language with a little NFL draft. We're a little early on it, although we are getting to the point where we're going to have to turn the page a little bit towards the draft for some of these teams. Might talk a little NFL draft here on this show for the teams that might be trending in that direction, but there's certainly a lot of intriguing things, some MVP candidates, some teams that are making playoff runs, some teams that are turning around everything. We will give you all the stats that told the story here for every single game, and you guys can follow along as well. If you have a PFF Plus subscription, that's the best way to do that. Go to PFF.com. You can see all the premium stats that we're going to be releasing here on this show as we chat about all of it. Now let's dive into the first game here right off the bat. And Dalton, to quote you 30 seconds before the show started, all right, let's get the Jets game over with. So we have the Pittsburgh
that's pretty much it right now. Yeah,
Pittsburgh Steelers victorious on Sunday Night Football. All the hype was for the New York Jets, even with the quarterback change of Russell Wilson. Now as a starting quarterback, 1-0 here on this season. Mike Tomlin, man, it's
magic.
I feel like every year over the last 3 to 4 years, I've said to myself, okay, this is it. This is when the Steelers sort of regress a little bit. Here they are. They are 5-2 on the season. They win 37-15 in this one, defending home turf. Stat that told the story. Let's hear it, my friend. What do we got?
All right, I'll start with the Jets run game because I think there's a lot about the Jets here that we're going to have to talk about now. They're 2-5. But I'll start with the run game. Once again, a struggle. 15 carries for 54 yards. 12 of them were on the last play of the game, I think, to Isaiah Davis when the game was already over. I think the general theme here is just not enough support for Aaron Rodgers. And I know Rodgers, obviously, as the quarterback, is going to get a whole lot of blame. But he's their highest graded offensive player this season. He's been pretty good, not elite, but he's been pretty good in 6 of their 7 games, outside of the Minnesota game, obviously, where he wasn't, got him off to a bad start. But this is just about the Jets as a whole team kind of failing Rodgers. And the theory was coming into the year, okay, even if Rodgers is what he was in 2022, which was when his last year with the Packers, which was roughly the 10th best passer in football. I think he had the 10th best passing grade in the league. And you go, okay, if you add a solid quarterback to this Jets roster, then they're going to be pretty darn good because for the entire, at least especially PFF history of the Jets, they've been the worst quarterback team in the NFL by far, okay? They're getting that version of Rodgers. He's got right around a 77 grade on the year. He was in the high 60s in this game. He wasn't awful in this game outside of the first interception in the Tampa 2 hole to Beanie Bishop, which was just a spectacular play. But now the rest of it's just not been supporting it. They're second to last in the league in rushing yards per game, 56.2 run blocking grade in this game, which is about where they sit for the season. They only had 10 yards before contact on the ground in this game. So it's also, I mean, you have obviously a tough Steelers defensive front you're working with.
Right.
Their D-line is hard enough to block for any team, but I think you're really getting at, I know the blame is going to be directed to Aaron Rodgers, but he's been their best player this season, which I think tells you enough about how the rest of the offense and the rest of the team, we'll get into the other side here in a second, they're just not a good team, if we're being honest.
And I think that's the way that we have to talk about the New York Jets right now, right? I saw some people in the media talking about this morning, and I agree with them. The Jets are a roster right now. They're not a football team. They are not together. They're not playing as one. It just feels, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, it feels like there's so much pressure everywhere. I mean, like, look at the Garrett. Look at the this was the second Beanie Bishop interception where ball goes off Garrett Wilson's chest. Come on, man. And like, I'm not trying to pile on Garrett Wilson. Like, he's a great wide receiver. And you could tell afterwards when he was doing his post-game press conference and when they were talking to him in the media in the locker room, he's bummed about it. Like, he's pissed. He knows he should make that play, but that's just what it feels like. It feels like there's just so much tenseness. Like, everyone just does not want to mess up. And now they are sitting here, are they 2-5 in possession of the number 5 overall pick if the draft were to end this week? They are simply, Jalen just said this in our chat, they are simply a disappointing football team. Just overall, top to bottom, they are a disappointing football team. And I think that my stat that told the story here is with the New York Jets defense. To me, that's the most disappointing thing about anything, because you mentioned a little bit about everybody on the team and like, okay, Rodgers is playing well enough. They should be a little bit better than what they are right now. But certainly the defensive side of the football, to me, is what's holding this team back. You know, we can sit here and talk about Rodgers got to be better. The offense doesn't look in flux. Obviously, the offensive line sort of had difficulty blocking for Breece Hall and things like that. But, man, the defense, to me, is so disappointing on this team because over the last 2 years, the whole topic of conversation was just get them average. Just get them average at the quarterback position, and this defense will do the rest. Now they got above average at the quarterback position, and the defense has taken such a step back from what it's been over the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, when you look at things against the Pittsburgh Steelers, their EPA per play allowed was 5th worst in the NFL. Now, obviously, we have 2 games left, so there's 4 teams that haven't played. But they're 5th worst in the NFL for this singular week. And when it comes to their overall EPA per play allowed, they're 20th in the league. This has been a top 5, if not top 10, if not top 5 defense in a lot of different categories over the last 2 to 3 years. And here they are, bottom half of the NFL, if not somewhere in the 20s, if not close to the bottom of the list in EPA per play allowed. So it's just not the same defense here for the New York Jets.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's my most disappointing part also, and it's really for the season. You mentioned, look, they're 17th in overall grade, they're 19th in run defense grade, and it's their defensive line. Honestly, the only team graded lower than them on the defensive line is Carolina Panthers. Okay, there's so much that has gone wrong. That group is last in run defense grade, and they're 18th in pass rush win rate, which most of that's going to be Quinnen Williams and Will McDonald, but they just can't stop the run up front. Right now, the Jets' defense is a back 7, and now a very injured secondary. You pretty much have Sauce Gardner and a bunch of guys who shouldn't be starting out there right now, with DJ Reed hurt, with Michael Carter hurt, with Chuck Clark hurt. You got Sauce Gardner and a bunch of bench guys. But this defensive line, this is the way it's been all year. And you look at the Jermaine Johnson tore his Achilles. You've got guys like Michael Clemens not playing as well. Mm-hmm. Solomon Thomas and Javon Kinlaw have struggled for pretty much the entirety of their careers. I mean, there's just a cascade of things. Letting Bryce Huff go and letting John Franklin Myers go so they could get Hassan Reddick in, but he hasn't played a snap yet, and he's going to come back, and honestly, it's probably too late to fix it anyway. To me, their defense, it's the numbers, even some of the positive numbers are propped up by the fact that they got to play New England on a Thursday night and Denver in the pouring rain. You look at them outside of these 2 games, it's not a good defense. And it's a defense whose back 7 is trying to make up for all of the flaws of their defensive line. You can't have the second worst defensive line in the league and think you're going to succeed. That's just not how it works. We talk about it all the time. If you're not good in the trenches, you can be average in the trenches. That's fine. They're not even average in the trenches on the defensive side. And on the offensive side, they're not even average in the trenches in the run game. So, pass protection, that has gotten better, certainly better than the mess it was last year. But this is a team now that the meat and potatoes of it is just not supporting it, even with a quarterback that is playing still relatively well, despite what some people might be thinking, oh, it's all Aaron Rodgers' fault. Look, he's 2nd in the league in big-time throws, and he's got the 3rd best turnover-worthy play rate. If you said that before the year that they were getting that out of Aaron Rodgers, you would have thought they were winning 12, 13 games. So the rest of this team is just not. They're not getting it done at all, and I don't really know when they're going to.
And the Steelers won this game, and I want to give them their credit. So before we jump into the most impressive, which we both have Pittsburgh Steelers for that, let's take a look at those top 5 graded players that we had for both these teams. And we'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers because they won the game. Defensive tackle Keanu Benton with an elite 90.2 grade. Wide receiver George Pickens with a 90.1. Alex Highsmith back in the lineup from injury, 84.3. Darnell Washington, 83.2. And the number 5, Beanie Bishop, 2 interceptions in this game, 78.8 PFF grade. Russell Wilson, 64.1. Not bad. not bad. I mean, obviously, the completion percentage could be better from him, and it was his first time starting, but 64.1, all things considered, pretty good. When you go to the Jets side of things, their top 5 wide receiver, Allen Lazard, 81.1, safety Tony Adams with a 78.9, defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw coming in at number 3 at a 76.8, Will McDonald, number 4 with a 75.2, and then linebacker Quincy Williams with a 70.7. Aaron Rodgers in this game earned a 67.4 PFF grade. So, I don't want this all to be about the Jets, right? Because the Steelers won this football game. They defended home turf. Like, they played well. It was a change of quarterback. You didn't know exactly what was going to show up there. And, Russell Wilson, it's not like you lit the world on fire. 16 for 29, but he did enough. 264 yards. The moon ball was back, baby. And we love to see that, especially with a guy like George Pickens, who I know was your most impressive in this game. So let's talk about George Pickens and the combination now of Russell Wilson being the guy to be able to find him deep down the field.
Yeah, and they got this turned around when they were struggling early. They were down 2 scores early, but they got it turned around by just giving Pickens a shot. And even if Wilson didn't make the best throws he could have made, especially the ball that went off a defender's helmet and Pickens caught it off the deflection.
Still caught it, baby.
Even if Wilson didn't make his best throws, and he got off to a really slow start. He looked like a guy who was trying to find his rhythm and trying to get back to the speed of the game. But when he did, it started with getting George Pickens going down the field, right? And he's the one true vertical threat on this team. We've talked about a lot. He's really the only legitimate wide receiver on this team right now. Otherwise, Pat Freiermuth's really good at tight end, and they're working the run game. But Wilson being able to take the top off relatively accurately to Pickens deep downfield and getting these safeties out of the box and then working the run game off of it, it's just a really good compliment, right? And I think Justin Fields, he was playing really good football. He was, but it was much more conservative football, and they were struggling to complete passes downfield. You mentioned the moon ball. It is a big factor, right? Sometimes a guy with George Pickens, he's 6'4", 6'5", and you want to just get up there, give him a chance to do it, right? That's what he's best at, is contested catches and body control. He's not the best separator on the planet, but he's going to make those 50-50 balls look better than that, right? And I think that was really the part in this game. When they got jump-started, it was because Pickens made catches downfield. Wilson gave him an opportunity, and that's where the big plays came from for the Steelers in this game.
Yeah, when you look at wide receivers this year on targets of 20 or more yards down the field, George Pickens is second in receiving grade, only to A.J. Brown. And then he is tied with DK Metcalf for 10 receptions of 20 or more yards. So this is fantastic. And I do think that this goes into sort of what Mike Tomlin was talking about. And, everybody goes, well, how are you making this change? Justin Fields is playing well enough. You're 4-2. And Mike Tomlin, he gets up there in the media and he says, look, one, this is my decision, which I love, the head coach saying, like, hey, if it's bad, it's on me. 100% it's on me. But I do think what he was saying was true. We're trying to win a Super Bowl. We're not just trying to win regular season games. And right now, he knows that Justin Fields is playing well enough for them to win games, is enough to win a Super Bowl. And I think what we saw against the Jets is evidence to believe that Mike Tomlin was doing the right thing here by saying, okay, it's been good enough on the ground and Justin Fields has been efficient enough. We've been okay. But to really be able to push the ball deep down the field, to get the most out of a guy like George Pickens, who is very clearly your wide receiver one on this team, you need somebody who has that experience doing so. Wilson was willing to push the ball deep down the field. They had that success doing so. And so I think that goes back to what Tomlin said. And that's the whole reason why Russell Wilson is in there. So I wanted to shout that out as well. My most impressive, Najee Harris. Najee Harris, all right. I mean, it wasn't like an all otherworldly performance. 21 carries, 102 rushing yards, and a touchdown. But this is 3 games in a row now where his rushing grade's been above 75, and it's back-to-back games where he's had over 100 yards rushing. And so I don't think that Najee is going to be a player who's going to, win the rushing title, or we're going to look at as one of the best backs in the league, anything like that. But the Steelers very clearly just want to be balanced on offense, very balanced on offense when it comes to run opportunities and pass opportunities. Najee has been doing that well enough. And in fact, I think he's been more consistent over this 3-game stretch than we've seen him be in a long time. And I think that goes into exactly what the Steelers want to do here. Do we have a most disappointing outside of you were saying the Jets defense, right? I just think it's the Jets season overall.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And it's been really tough for them. 7 weeks into the year, they had the 8th toughest schedule to this point, according to our power rankings. I will say this though. They have the 32nd ranked strength of schedule moving forward. So it's the easiest schedule in the NFL moving forward. Now, I don't know if they're in too deep of a hole, but it does at least mean, hey, let's wait probably 3 to 4 weeks before we really bury the New York Jets. Because if they win, if they go 3-1 over the next 4 games,
I mean, you got New England next week and then Houston on a Thursday after that.
Then they're sitting there, they're like 5-6. They're kind of right back in the mix of things. Then you can sort of figure it out after that. So we're not burying the New York Jets quite yet. They've got time. They have somewhat of an easy schedule moving forward. But it is worth noting because they are certainly running out of time. Let's turn the clock back to the London game that we had before the afternoon games got kicked off. It was the Jacksonville Jaguars against the team that you just mentioned, the New England Patriots. So Jacksonville really needing a win here. I mean, of course, the Patriots did too, but let's face it, I think that people know what this Patriots season is. And we'll get into some of the meaning and the takeaways that we have in this game. Jacksonville wins this game 32-16. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players here from Jacksonville as the winners of this one. Rookie Brian Thomas Jr., a 91.6. A big part of that comes from the 60-yard bomb that him and Trevor Lawrence connected on, which was on Christian Gonzalez too. I don't know. That play specifically, I just want to say, Gonzalez was in elite position. Like, you basically cannot play that any better without maybe getting a forced incompletion. So it was just a damn good job by Lawrence and Thomas to really come down with that one and a big play in that game. Number 2 on this list for the Jags, Arik Armstead with an 89.9 overall grade. Cornerback Jerry Jones with an 82.0. I'll talk about him more in a sec. Defensive tackle Devon Hamilton with an 81.6, and then offensive tackle Walker Little with a 79.3. Trevor Lawrence in this game, 86.2. Flipping over to New England side of things, tight end Austin Hooper had the top grade with an 89.4. It was the only grade in the 80s. Then we jumped down at number 2 to Jonathan Jones, their cornerback, a 77.5. Tight end Hunter Henry with a 75.2. Anthony Jennings, their edge rusher, a 72.7. And then offensive tackle Mike Onwenu with a 71.7. Drake May in this game here, 53.2 PFF grade. Stat that told the story here for you.
I mean, it's really a story of one team ran the ball and one team didn't, and I'll go with the New England side of it. Look, Drake May, I thought actually when he was in a clean pocket and he had just a little bit of help with some pass protection and the receivers catching the ball, I thought Drake May looked pretty decent in this game. Under pressure, it was a struggle, but he's going to be under pressure a lot. The problem is he really got no help from his run game at all. The Patriots had 12 design carries for 20 yards and 1 first down in this game, and I'm just going to tie it into the most disappointing. Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, look, these are the guys that are supposed to at least provide some sort of balance to this offense, right? We saw it a little bit earlier in the year, especially when they beat the Bengals. They were playing well against Seattle, games like that, but this running game is just completely stagnated, and now you have a team where you have a rookie quarterback. You have a lot of young receivers who have been kind of struggling. We already know the offensive line issues. Now, in part because of the offensive line issues also, they're getting nothing out of their run game. This can't be Drake May out here by himself, just trying to make himself better and develop with no help at all. I mean, you talk about the offensive line, 0.7 yards before contact per attempt on those 12 design carries. And this was not a game that was a blowout, right? Even though, you had the Parker Washington punt return, it was 22-10 at halftime, but that's also not some insurmountable lead where you have to just throw the ball every play, right? This was the Patriots for probably 3/4 of this game were at least in it, but they just couldn't run the ball at all. And it's not like it's a great Jacksonville defense you're going against. So, I mean, Stevenson, Gibson, the one running back who scored a touchdown was Jermichael Hasty, who honestly before this game I didn't even know he was on the roster. They need some sort of it's the theme every single week, even if whether you're going to play Drake May or Jacoby Brissett or whoever. They need some sort of help. They need some sort of balance. And it's just the problem of when you can't block people and the running backs aren't making extra things happen outside of that, and you have 20 design rushing yards in a game, you're probably not going to win because you're putting too much on your rookie quarterback.
Walt in the chat saying that Patriots should give Corey Dillon some more touches. I agree. Maybe you can see what he's doing, get him out there for next week and see what he can make happen. No, I think that I agree with you. Jermichael Hasty, by the way, he seems like one of those running backs where if he scores a touchdown randomly for like one team and then literally the next week I saw him like score for another team, both of those I wouldn't flinch. I'd be like, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. And then, like, right. 3-4 weeks later, it's like, oh, Jermichael Hasty, nice little catch for a first down. For a third completely different team, and be like, yeah, of course. Yeah, right. I believe it. You mentioned that the story of this game was about the running game. One team was able to do it, the other team was not. You talked about the team that was not able to do it. I'll talk about the team that was, and it was Jacksonville. We here on the show, and I think everybody likes to talk about the deep passing game for this team. right? We get very frustrated when Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't have the days like he had this past Sunday, or when Christian Kirk isn't able to get as involved, or Evan Ingram or Gabe Davis is struggling with deep passes, because that's why he was brought in, right? We like to focus on the deep passing game for Jacksonville. But in reality, you don't want to make a living off of that. You don't want it to just be all on passing the ball deep down the field, because as we have seen through, I would say, the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, when you do that, that is when you stall. That is when the third down conversion percentage goes down, because you sit here on 3rd and 4 and you go, all right, pass it deep, I guess. Like, that's what we do. No, it's got to be more simple than that, especially on the early downs as well. And I felt like Jacksonville specifically, they are at their best when they run the football. And I think that that's sort of an obvious duh. Every team is like that. But for a team that gets all the publicity for their passing attack, what they did on the ground is the reason why they won this game against the Patriots in the fashion in which they were able to do so. Tank Bigsby in this game, 26 carries, 118 yards, 4.5 yards per carry average. Dearness Johnson, a 4.2 yards per carry average. So to have 2 running backs, your 1 and your 2 there, because Travis Etienne didn't play in this game, average more than 4 yards a carry, that's what we're talking about. That's what this Jags offense needs. Not, sure, like, yeah, we'd like some of the receivers to play better, but the passing game in general is much more variance. It's much more up and down. So we can sit here and say, oh man, I'd like more consistency out of Christian Kirk or Gabe Davis or whatever. The real answer for Jacksonville is the floor cannot be as low as it has been through the first 5-6 weeks of the season. And that floor is so low because the offense just is either red hot or it's completely cold. And the only reason why that's the case is because they can't run the football. And on Sunday, they were able to run the football. And if they're able to do things like that, then you start to complement it with that deep passing game, and it truly becomes an overall offensive philosophy that gets to come to life. So how the Jags did in the run game is a big reason why they won this game. They were 3rd in the NFL in EPA per rush. It was the highest EPA per rush that they have had through 7 weeks of the season. I think that's why you saw them look as comfortable as they did on offense. Most impressive from you in this game.
I'll go back on the other side, and there's a couple of reasons the Patriots couldn't run the ball. Also on the Jags side, their linebackers were spectacular in this game. Foye Oluokun was out. They kind of needed some guys to fill in alongside Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd, a really good game himself, flying all over the place in the run game, an 80.8 run defense grade. But I want to point out the 2 guys filling in for Oluokun. You had Ventrell Miller, Florida Gator, former Florida Gator, right? 90.6 run defense grade. He was flying all over the place in run defense. Chad Muma had a really good game in coverage coming in for Miller. He had a 74.9 coverage grade. The Jaguars linebackers, especially without really the guy who's like their veteran captain, he's led the league. Oluokun, I think, has led the league in tackles multiple times. He's really the guy that's usually doing that. They found a way to fill in. Devin Lloyd had a great game as the usual starter. Those other 2 guys were good in Oluokun's stead. The run defense for the Jaguars was just as responsible for the Patriots' struggles in the run game as were their own struggles.
Jerry Jones, I want to shout him out. He was one of those players who was on the top 5 list for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but the rookie is playing well. I was really impressed with him throughout the draft season when I got to see him in person, specifically at the East-West Shrine Bowl. And man, I thought he played really well. 86.2 coverage grade in this game, 36 coverage snaps. He was targeted 7 times, did give up 5 catches for 34 yards, but had 2 forced incompletions as well. They targeted him quite a bit. It was an active day for Jones, but more often than not, he was the one who was winning some of those reps. And so I think that's what we've been looking for, right? I think when Tyson Campbell was out specifically, we were wondering, hey, who else in the secondary is really going to step up for this group? And even with Tyson Campbell out there, Jerry Jones being able to get into this lineup, I think is pretty huge. Most disappointing for you in this?
It's really, again, it's Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. With New England, just their lack of run game and lack of help for Drake May is really an overarching theme, a disappointing theme. And we knew it was coming before the season. It's not like it's surprising, but you would like to see May get a little more help. Because, again, I thought when he was put in good situations in this game, when he had a clean pocket, when he wasn't pressured in a second and a half, when he was at least getting somewhat to work off some play action, I think that's one thing that needs to be said. Drake May, through 2 starts, has not looked awful. He's probably made the best of what he can of the situation that he has, but the situation is it's rough, to say the least. And one more thing I just want to throw out there with Jerry Jones, too. Mm-hmm. Performances like this and more season-long performances like this with so many teams in the nickel, it's going to be guys like Jerry Jones who start getting slot corners drafted higher. because it's just such an important thing nowadays. And I think
100%.
I think a guy like him, or a guy we saw, Mike Sainris, still drafted for Washington in the second round.
Another good game this weekend.
These guys, and then you see Trent McDuffie and Michael Carter and some other good guys in the slot. Guys like Jones are going to just continue to increase the future value of these slot corners. We saw Kenny Moore get a new contract this offseason. I just think it's I think it's a position that's going to get more and more valued in the offseason every single year. You have to be able to defend in the slot, and if he's a guy who can do that for Jacksonville long term, that's big time.
That is a great call out because I agree with you completely there. My most disappointing, Jalen Polk's bumming me out, man. And he's bumming me out because I like Jalen Polk a lot. He was a fun receiver, obviously, in that Washington offense. And specifically, it felt like any time Michael Penix Jr. last year needed a big-time contested catch. Yeah, of course, Rome Odunze was there as well. I don't want to take anything from Rome Odunze. But, man, Polk had some crazy full extension, contested catch situations. It looked like he had some of the best hands in the draft. And so far this season, I mean, he was disappointing again this game specifically, but I wanted to take it to just overall this season. 58.8 catchable passes caught this season. Like the number that you want's in the 80s, low 90s. And he's at 58.8. He's caught 10 of 28 total targets this season, and he's just 3 of 11 on contested catches. It's got to be better from Jalen Polk. And we didn't talk a lot about Drake May in this one. I thought Drake May had some really nice big-time throws. I thought he played a little bit better under pressure this week compared to last week, and so that obviously was a key for the Patriots moving forward. I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, hey, these are teams that, sure, both of them would have loved to get a win, but the real win for the Patriots is just the fact that Drake May looked pretty good for a handful of throws. It's time for Jalen Polk to step up. We need Jalen Polk to at the very least establish himself as a wide receiver 2 on this team moving forward. Maybe they go out and get an even better wide receiver 1 this offseason. Who knows? We'll see. But it's got to be better from their rookie Jalen Polk moving forward as now Drake May is in there. Seahawks Falcons. I definitely want to talk about this game because Falcons went into Atlanta and just dominated them. 34-14 was the final score in this one after, some frustrating, I think, last couple of weeks for the Seattle Seahawks, right? You lose the New York Giants, you lose to your rival, the San Francisco 49ers. It was great for them to go into Atlanta and get a big-time road win there. Let's look at the top 5 graded players for Seattle here. Edge rusher Derek Hall with an 87.8 overall grade. Kenneth Walker, their running back, an equal 87.7 there. Wide receiver DK Metcalf with an 80.6. Safety Julian Love a 79.1. And then wide receiver Tyler Lockett with a 77.8. Geno Smith in this game had some monster throws, but a 69.3 overall grade is what it all came out to be for Atlanta. Their defensive tackle and their veteran on their defense, Grady Jarrett, an 89.1. Bijan Robinson, the running back, 84.0. Guard Matthew Bergeron earned an 81.9. Arnold Ebiketie, their edge rusher, was the top edge rusher in this one, 78.9. And then guard Chris Lidstrom with a 77.9. Kirk Cousins in this game, 54.9. We're going to talk about Kirk Cousins a little bit more in a second, but stat that told the story. What do we got here?
For me, it actually is Kirk Cousins, and I'm very in between on his season right now and where it has been and where it's going. On one hand, they might not have any wins without him, right? You had the comeback against the Eagles, you had the comeback against the Falcons, you had one against the Bucks,
and they were very
against the Saints. Sorry,
and they were very vintage how a veteran of Kirk Cousins would win you that game.
Right.
Yes.
The problem is they are just. Their passing game isn't all that consistent. There's a couple of things that concern me with Cousins right now. What's weird? He has, I just saw the 11th or 12th best passing grade in the league. He has 3 big-time throws and 14 turnover-worthy plays.
Yeah.
Which feels odd. And I think the 3 big-time throws thing gets me a little bit because I'm watching this game. I'm watching the Falcons offense in this game, and I go, where is the downfield? When are we going to get downfield? Is it Drake London? Maybe just throw him a jump ball like the Steelers did with George Pickens. Is it Darnell Mooney taking off on him? Is it Kyle Pitts working something, a corner route or something? And there's just nothing happening down the field. And you look at, I just want to focus on the first 3 quarters because once they had the scoop and score, the Seahawks, and they were up by 20, then they started throwing downfield because what do you got to lose? First 3 quarters of this game, they have one explosive pass play, and that was a swing route to Bijan Robinson. He took 30 yards after the catch. 5-yard average depth of target in the first 3 quarters, and he only threw 2 passes 10 or more yards down the field. In the first 3 quarters of this game, 1 for 2 for 11 yards on 10-plus yard throws. So I'm sitting here going, are the Falcons generally Are they just not explosive? Is this what we're doing now? Because he's only got 3 big-time throws now in, 7 games, and they're not working the ball downfield at all. You can feel them playing in this box because the run game has gotten going. So I looked into this, 10-plus yard throws, all right? In their 4 wins, Kirk Cousins is 32 for 54 on 10-plus yard throws with a 91.1 passing grade. In their 3 losses, he's 11 of 28 with a 56.2. The difference in this football team is whether or not Kirk Cousins can get the ball down the field.
Yeah.
And right now, in a game like this, and against a good secondary in Seattle, right? Generally, at least it's supposed to be with Witherspoon and Woolen and Julian Love playing well and all those guys. I could feel it in the first 3 quarters. I'm like, this is so dink and dunk. And the run game, again, Bijan played well in this game. The run game was working. The run blocking has been better the last couple of weeks, but you cannot, just like the Steelers with Justin Fields and what they had going on, you can't live in this 10-yard box. You can't do it. And if Kirk Cousins, he's got to start pushing the ball down the field because did he do it in the fourth quarter? Sure. Threw a couple picks. Really didn't matter. They were down 20 at that point. If you can't push the ball downfield early in games and threaten teams and threaten safeties, what does it matter? It is so hard to go 70, 75, 80 yards when you're just going 5 yards at a time and you're not even trying to work it downfield when you've got Kyle Pitts, who is supposed to be making plays downfield. Drake London can make plays downfield. Darnell Mooney's got enough speed to make plays, right? We have seen a clear-cut line. If they can get the ball vertically down the field and they can make big plays, they will win. And if they don't, they're going to look like this because they're just so in this bubble right now where they're not even threatening it. He threw 2 balls past 10 air yards in the first 3 quarters of this game. It's not going to get it done.
And it felt like everything else was there, right? Like, to your point, you've got Bijan Robinson over 100 yards, 4.9 yards per carry average and a touchdown in this one. Tyler Algier, 7.2 yards per carry in this game. Like, you ran the ball the way that you wanted to. The next part was just complementing it with a passing attack that had something deep down the field. I mean, you are completely correct, and the numbers are not good enough. This season overall, I would say passing the ball 10 or more yards down the field. It wasn't just in this game. Anytime that they have been passing at 10 or more yards, 54.2 passing grade. And in this game specifically, the 2 interceptions that you mentioned, the turnover-worthy plays, 0 big-time throws. So to me, it is like, I think we do need to start really talking about exactly how you set this up. Maybe they don't have a couple of those wins without Kirk Cousins. But is he the best quarterback on the roster at this point?
I think you still have to say yes. Because
I think you do too. But how much longer can you go? They did everything they wanted to do on offense at home, Dalton, and scored 14 points.
Right. But this is a hard one because they are a small handful of plays from being 1-6. The Carolina game was the only one that they really definitively won without a last 2-minute miracle. And it's great to win close games. Look, you've got a team like the Falcons winning their close games, and you've got a team like the Jets losing theirs, right? It is that small a margin of error. I just worry about, you're right, because what does Michael Penix do? What did he do at Washington? He threw the ball downfield. They threw the deep ball more than anybody. He's at least going to threaten it when you give him a chance to, right? The combination of Cousins, this being such a clear line between their success and their failure, working the ball downfield, and the fact that he only has 3 big-time throws, I don't know if it's the Achilles and the health. I don't know if he's just not willing. Maybe they're not separating downfield, or even maybe they're just not calling the downfield concepts that they should early in these games, but it would help their offense. It does. We've seen it, actually. I shouldn't even say that. It does help their offense. In their 4 wins, when they can work the ball vertically, they succeed because they're balanced. They're balanced in the way that some other teams aren't. We always talk about balance being, you need the run game to support the pass game, but you got to get people out of this box because it's very hard when everyone knows that you're gonna only throw the ball 5 yards or you're only gonna work 4 or 5 yards at a time. When everyone knows it,
Seahawks were ready for it.
Right,
they were extremely ready for it.
They knew that you could see it. They knew that if we sit back and just make him complete pass after pass after pass, we'll just make a play eventually. We'll get there.
It's not even, and my stat that told the story here has to do with the Seattle Seahawks pass rush, because I think that they dug into the numbers and realized that a lot of those turnover-worthy plays come when Cousins is pressured. And normally when we think of Kirk Cousins, we think, okay, veteran guy, he can handle pressure pretty well. He has been able to do so in the past.
Can't move.
He is tied for the league lead in turnover-worthy plays when pressured. It's him and it's Jalen Hurts. And he threw another turnover-worthy play when pressured this week. Seahawks pass rush, 71.8 pass rush grade as a team. You know, the Falcons offensive line, they're not really able to block in the passing game as well as they are to move, as well as they can, move people in the run game. Seahawks defensive line, 3 sacks in this one, 20 pressures, 38.5 pass rush win rate. And so I really do believe that Mike Macdonald looked at this situation and he said, okay, here's how we're going to win this game. We are going to say, beat us deep. Throw it deep down the field. You'll have the opportunity to do so. And let's pressure the crap out of them. That's exactly what they probably played a little bit close. I haven't seen every single defensive snap, but I got to imagine what they did is they probably played close and they probably threw a lot of stuff at the offensive line. And Kirk was not able to beat them. And so I'm not saying, hey, let's go to Michael Penix, who did play in this game sort of in garbage time. I'm not saying let's go to Michael Penix now for the Atlanta Falcons. All I'm saying is that what we are talking about are little breadcrumbs that lead us down the path to get there. Because that is really, I think there are plenty of times when we ask for quarterback changes and it's like, okay, what's the other guy going to change? Show me something statistically, analytically, data-wise, player performance that would make this switch warranted. And I think sometimes we just go, this guy just stinks. And it's like, let's throw the other guy out there. This is actually a tangible thing when you look at Michael Penix as somebody who throwing it deep down the field was not an issue for him last year.
And he's more mobile than Kirk. You know, he got criticized for some lack of mobility, and then he went out there, put it his pro day, and ran a 4.5. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, I think Cousins' only answer to pressure is get rid of the ball before it gets here, right? It's kind of the same way as Aaron Rodgers now that he's not as mobile as he used to be, both off the Achilles, of course, where it's like, okay, he's not going to escape. He doesn't have escape in him. So he either gets rid of the ball, usually to some sort of hot read or something 4 or 5 yards down the field. And honestly, from what I saw, the Seahawks, they may have been sending that pressure and still playing soft coverage. Because then all you have to do is just not get beat after the catch. Why make a mistake in press, against a Drake London who could beat you like that? Don't give him a chance to throw a jump ball and don't give him a chance to escape because he really can't. This is a dangerous combination for the Falcons. And I think it's going to be worth watching week to week. I think we're going to start saying this a lot of weeks where it's like, did they make explosive plays down the field? Did they have time to get the ball downfield? Or is this really going to be a dink and dunk offense? Or are they just going to keep playing the game because I think Seattle did a good job too. We mentioned all the comebacks that they've had so far in Atlanta. Seattle did a really good job putting them away. Right, and I think that plays in part into your pass rush thing. When you get ahead, anytime you get ahead of a team, you can pin your ears back, put them away, and Cousins can't have that miracle 2-minute drive.
Yeah, my most impressive in this game, I'll switch over to the Seattle Seahawks side of things. It's DK Metcalf, 7 targets, 4 catches, 99 yards in this game before getting a little banged up. 90.4 receiving grade versus single coverage in this one. That's what I love so much about the Seattle Seahawks offense. Yeah, you got Tyler Lockett. Yeah, Jack Smith and Jig was kind of coming along. You got Kenneth Walker to be able to use out of the backfield as a rusher or a receiver. But when Geno Smith gets that look in his eyes and he's like, all right, it's time to open it up, let's rip it, he can throw it to a player who's open even when he's not open. And those are special wide receivers. And Metcalf is one of those guys who's open even when he's not. And you could tell that by the grade in single coverage and his consistent contested catch ability. He was also one of the highest graded players that I mentioned when it came to those passes 20 or more yards down the field that I was chatting about with George Pickens. It's the same thing here with DK Metcalf and the success that you can have, and him and Geno have a good one here. Most impressive, and then real quick, most disappointing before we move on.
I'll go in the run game first. Most impressive. I thought, especially through the first 2.5 or so quarters in this game, that Kenneth Walker was really good. I mean, I think getting the balance out of this offense that you mentioned, likes to throw it deep. They want to throw it deep. That's the goal. But to get the balance from Walker, I thought he ran really hard. 93 total yards, 6 more missed tackles forced. 2 touchdowns. It was a terrific touchdown catch he had on a wheel in the third quarter. I mean, I think when you get more of this out of Walker, again, this is kind of what we've been asking for from Seattle the last few weeks, right? I think, what was it? They only called 7 run plays against the Giants. You have talented backs. I know the offensive line is kind of a work in progress. We're putting it together. You got Stone Forsythe at right tackle. There's some other issues up front, but you still have to try to do these things because you got 2 really good players in the backfield, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Walker was the best one in this game, 87.8 overall grade. He was terrific. And then I like what you mentioned about their passing game and even Ryan Grubb, their offensive coordinator. The one thing I always loved about that offense that they had at Washington was they create those one-on-one matchups down the field. And if you give them time to get on your safeties, that's a nightmare. That's a nightmare for a defense because it's an offense that's really good at isolating safeties in coverage. And my most disappointing guy, it's a rough game. We know he's maybe even a borderline Hall of Famer one day. Justin Simmons had a rough one. He did. Look, he gave up, I believe it was 5 catches. The long touchdown late in the second quarter, right before halftime, was big. They got somebody, I think it was Metcalf, isolated on him for that touchdown. Mm-hmm. You just had in the Falcons secondary, especially with their lack of pass rush. They did get 1 sack in this game, which for them feels like a lot. But it was a struggle for Justin Simmons and the rest of the guys in that secondary, especially down the middle of the field, because you do have an offense that when they have time in the pocket, they get on safeties. Geno's a terrific deep ball thrower when he gets there. And I thought Geno's pocket movement in this game was really good. This was as good as he's looked in several weeks. They need to save this tape somewhere right front and center because this is how their offense is supposed to look.
The people in the chat are scaring me right now. Dr. Detroit's out here. He's talking about the Lions, and we're going to get to the Lions in the Vikings game. That was obviously a great one, but he just said in the chat, Crosby to Detroit. And I thought it was not like a request. Thought he was kind of like breaking some news, so I'm immediately running to Twitter. Don't see anything that hasn't happened. And then like Walt's in here like, nah, they're not gonna get Crosby. Think maybe DeMarcus Lawrence, and then we've got some other people in the chat. They're like, nah, dream bigger, go over Micah, go straight for Micah Parsons.
We got trades happening. We just got a whole trade deadline special in the chat right now. I just love
this time of year. It's just when we get a couple of weeks out from the trade block, there's just so much potential movement, which obviously we'll kind of continue to talk about here on the show.
Already had a couple of big ones.
Of course we did. And I know that those aren't going to be the last as we get to separate contenders and pretenders and who might be buyers and sellers at the deadline. Before we get into the next game, best part about football season is what? It's always about checking the post-game stats, right? Which wideouts are scoring more than 2 touchdowns, which quarterbacks threw for more or less than 350 yards. If you think you could pick what's going to happen before kickoff, you got to play Pick 6 by DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. You download the DraftKings Pick 6 app. You select between 2 to 6 players. Choose if they will have more or less than a single stat, and that's it. It's that simple. For the first time, all Pick 6 customers, check this out. They bet $5. You get 50 in free Pick 6 credits right there once you place the bet. There's a lot of really great matchups that we have upcoming for week 8. Even the Monday Night Football. I mean, I know it's going to be a little bit dated, but if you think that Chris Godwin's going to go off, Mike Evans is going to go off, if you think that they're going to have more than whatever their statistics are, it's something simple like that. Even if it's just one player that you think you have a really good beat on, pick them, and then one more. All you have to do is have 2, and it's really easy. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now. Use promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF. For new customers to play $5 on your first Pick 6 set, and you get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Really good game here that I want to jump back into these reviews. Texans-Packers. Packers come away victorious in this one, 24-22. Came down to a couple of the very last plays. Green Bay wins this one, so let's take a look at their top 5 graded players in this game. Linebacker Eric Wilson at the very top of the list with an 82.7. Romeo Doubs with a 76.4. Edge rusher Rashawn Gary with a 74.0. And then offensive tackle Zach Tom at number 4 with a 72.6. Xavier McKinney back on the list here with a 69.1. And then Jordan Love at 72.2 in this one. Flipping over to Houston's side of things. Running back Joe Mixon, hell of a day for him, 82.5. Hell of a year, feels like, in that offense for him. Linebacker Jake Hansen with an 82.0. Cornerback Jalen Petrie, an 81.7. And then defensive tackle Tim Settle with an 81.5. Guard Shaq Mason, one of the few bright spots on that offensive line. I'll get to that in a second. 79.1 to round things out at number 5. And then CJ Stroud, a 62.7 in this game. Dalton, what was your stat that told the story here from a good game of two teams that might very well be two of the top 5 teams in the NFL.
Yeah, it was a good game, but it was also a little bit ugly. And I'll be honest, going back watching
a little pitcher's duel, you know?
Yeah, kind of. I'll be honest with you. I think going back and watching it a second time, I think the Packers should have won this game by 20. And I think the way their defense played and the Texans were just stagnant when you look at it. 197 total yards. CJ Stroud only had 86 passing yards, which is crazy. It was really more to me about the 3 turnovers for the Packers. You had 2 interceptions from Love, which Love was really good outside of those 2 interceptions, but they were 2 really bad interceptions. And you had the muff punt, I believe it was in the second quarter. The Texans got 16 of their points off turnovers. Honestly, without that, they're not in this game at all the way that they played. They weren't particularly great on defense, even though they held the Packers to 24 in this game. They certainly weren't great on offense with less than 200 yards of total offense. I really do feel like the Packers, the score doesn't reflect how much better they actually should have been in this game if not for those 3 turnovers. This was 90 to 95% of a really good effort from the Packers, and the score, they almost lost the game because of the turnovers, and they did slow down on offense in the second half until that last drive. I just thought the Texans don't usually look this vulnerable, especially Stroud, and the Packers, the score should have been wider. It was obviously good for them to come out with a win, but those 3 turnovers, falling behind and then having to come back, it really kept the Texans in the game because there wasn't, outside of Joe Mixon, I don't think the Texans did a whole lot right in this game.
No, and that's an interesting angle to say, hey, the stat that told the story is not necessarily like this is why the team won. Yours is why this team should have won by even more, which gives kudos to what a season the Packers are already having to start this year off in the first half. And my stat that told the story, I'm going to go with the Packers' aggressiveness because when I looked at C.J. Stroud's numbers, and you mentioned a very low total passing total from him. When you look at it overall, 10 for 21, 86 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions from him. It was just one of the most quiet days of the office that you will see from C.J. Stroud. And I looked into why, and it felt like the Packers were bringing all sorts of pressure in this game, and they were. And I think that aggressiveness is a big reason why they were able to hamper C.J. Stroud's success. Blitzed on 37.9% of their snaps against the Texans. And Shaq Mason, honestly, this kind of goes hand in hand. Shaq Mason, the only Texans offensive lineman with a blocking grade above 63. I mean, just whatever Green Bay was doing to bring pressure was overwhelming what the Texans had, especially on the inside, outside of Shaq Mason. But when I said, okay, well, so did Stroud play bad under pressure? Well, then I looked at the pressures, and no, he didn't. He didn't really play bad under pressure. I mean, it wasn't a great day overall. So the PFF passing grades, no matter how you looked at it, whether it was pressure or clean or just an in-between, like they weren't great. But when he was pressured, it's not that Stroud made mistakes where his passing grade really would have been anchored down or much lower on the list. But Dalton, it was enough. Like, it was just a little bit. The fact that he was flushed to his left or his right, he was making throws and making the correct reads and sometimes escaping that pressure well enough, but he was missing the throws by just a little bit. And when you miss a throw by just a little bit when you're being pressured, well, you want to take full context into account. That's what we do here at PFF. So it's not like you're going to say, oh, man, bad throw by C.J. Stroud. We're going to ding his passing grade because of that, because he was very close, and all things considered, he was giving his wide receiver a chance most of the time. So the passing grade isn't bad under pressure, but it was just that little margin that was created by the Packers being extra aggressive against him that, to me, is the reason why you see 10 for 21 in the passing game. Not having those completions. A lot of those wide receivers, very low receiving yard totals in this game. So to me, it was that Packers aggressiveness, especially for a defensive line that has really struggled to get after the quarterback with just their 4-man front through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. They knew it had to be more in this one, and I think the fact that they were willing, Jeff Hafley, their defensive coordinator, knew this year, the fact that he was willing to dial it up, to me, was the stat that told the story here. Most impressive from you. What do you got?
Honestly, it sounds funky considering what I just went over, but I'll still go with Jordan Love because I thought outside of, and again, they were 2 really bad interceptions. He graded around a 72.3 passing grade. I thought outside of those 2 throws, we start to see a little bit of riverboat gambler from Jordan Love, but the positive comes in spades, man. I mean, he is just, when he makes the really good throws, like the touchdown up the seam in the end zone where he just zipped it by Kalen Bullock, just wasn't fair. I mean, there's times where Jordan Love looks like the best quarterback in football, but I thought this was one of the most consistent games he's played this year, an 81.3% adjusted completion rate. That was his best on the season. I think we're starting maybe to see a little more from Jordan Love. Consistency, right? He did have the 2 big mistakes. I'll admit that. It's not the best he's ever going to look when it comes to the final numbers and the grades and all of that, but still gutted it out through that. Still had, I thought, other than those 2 throws, his most consistent effort, and still put together the game-winning drive. I'll still go with Jordan Love. Again, I don't think there was a ton of standouts on either side in this game, but he could have let those mistakes cascade into something worse, right? Like he did say in week 1 against the Eagles, right, when they lost that game. Would you like to see him cut down on the big mistakes? Sure. Really, again, only made 2 of them in this game. You'd like to see games without multiple interceptions, but gutted it out. I thought in between all of that was really good, and I'll take him. This is, I think, a positive step in this game for Jordan Love despite the 2 turnovers.
Yeah, I see some people in the chat talking about this, including Ryan Richardson, who is one of our producers and the producer of NFLSC, noted Packer fan. He said in all caps, Jordan Love MVP. So I'd love to unpin a grenade and just throw it into the chat here for everybody. Who would you rather have moving forward, CJ Stroud or Jordan Love?
How far forward are we moving?
Forward. That's all I'm saying.
That's far.
Who would you rather have moving forward?
It's
a simple question. You don't have to answer it. I just want the chat to answer.
Okay.
Then go back and forth.
I don't have to
and
answer.
then we can
it's actually better when I don't have to answer.
That's right.
That's even better.
I mean, it's already a 2.5-hour show.
I get held liable on both shows for whatever it is I say enough. If I don't have to answer, fantastic.
Well, I want to hear from the chat and the people that watch this a little bit afterwards. Packers fans, Houston Texans fans, let us know, who would you rather have moving forward, Jordan Love or C.J. Stroud? My most impressive in this game was linebacker Eric Wilson, who was the top-graded player for the Green Bay Packers. He was awesome. 56 snaps, high 80s overall grade, 88.9 passing grade. It just feels like the linebackers in general for the Packers, specifically what Eric Wilson is, and also the rookie Edgerrin Cooper, what they are doing as a group to stay aggressive and really play off of one another. I mean, they're making a ton of plays. Wilson was just so great with his anticipation, being a veteran, a guy who's been around the league quite a bit, almost 30 years old now. Like, this is somebody who was able to recognize screens, was able to get off blocks quickly, was attacking the line of scrimmage consistently. What a game from Eric Wilson, and he was a high-impact player, I think, in this one. My most disappointing was Stephon Diggs, because in a game where the chat's talking about, man, the Houston Texans could have really used Nico Collins, and they absolutely could have in this game. It was time for Stephon Diggs to step up, and he was not able to do so. 7 targets, 5 catches, only 23 yards, a 65.6 receiving grade. So 65.6, it's not terrible. But you bring in Stephon Diggs, so, like, man, if Nico Collins were to ever go down, boom, you got a wide receiver 1 right there that you can lean on. And it was a tough day at the office for everybody passing, but would have liked to see a better day from Stephon Diggs. What about your most disappointing?
I'll go on the outside for the Texans. Didn't have Kamari Lassiter in this game, but it was, so you had Derek Stingley on one side, D'Angelo Ross on the other side, and they both struggled. Honestly, there were stretches of this game. I thought the Packers were just going to throw a slant to Romeo Doubs every play, because it was working every single play. And I know they played a lot of zone coverage and all that, but it was a struggle on the outside. Stingley, a 47.3 coverage grade. Ross in place of Lassiter, a 50.4. They combined to allow 11 catches for 117 yards. A tough day at the office for Texans corners, despite it not being the highest passing yard total of the day. Although there was only one 300-yard passer this week. I mean, it's really we're continuing with this.
Oh, Baker Mayfield has yet to play. Give him time.
We'll get there. Well, it's a rough Sunday for quarterbacks, I thought, but the Texans still in big moments struggled on the outside. One more impressive guy I want to throw at you on top of Wilson. You mentioned being aggressive and at that second level. Man, the rookie Evan Williams at strong safety too.
He's been awesome.
He just keeps playing, and it's right in that vein. Literally everything you said about Eric Wilson, we could say about Evan Williams also. I love this dynamic where, look, they drafted 3 safeties, right? They drafted him and Javon Bullard and Katana Oladapo. They signed Xavier McKinney with the obvious idea of him being the deep guy, because Halfley likes to run a lot of single high, but man, one of those three safeties, they threw darts at the wall, and one of them hit in Evan Williams. And everything you said about Wilson is the same with Williams. Another really good day, especially in run defense. He's an impact player. He's one of the best day 3 players, if not, might be the highest graded day 3, if not the highest graded player.
So.
He might be the highest graded rookie in football right now.
He was the highest graded safety that we had over the last 3 weeks. I don't know what it would be this whole season, but I gotta imagine he's still at the top. Of the list.
The last couple of weeks, watch it. That is a difference maker. It's unreal what he's doing at that strong safety spot. Is kind of that tweener. He can play deep half. He rotates back sometimes. He plays up as an extra linebacker sometimes. He's made their defense a lot better.
The Stroud Love discussion is going exactly the way that you would think, and I think most people are on Stroud. But there's still some people who are absolutely taking Jordan Love. So that's a question that I will continue to revisit as long as the chat wants to talk about. Hey, I don't want to start a fist fight, although I did, like I said, unpin the grenade. Okay, the next game that I want to go to, Tennessee Titans, Buffalo Bills. Bills win this game 34-10. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players from the Buffalo Bills before we flip over to Tennessee side of things. Wide receiver Amari Cooper, the new kid in town, top of the list, 90.8 overall grade. You love to see when the investments already pay off for you. Edge rusher Greg Rousseau, hell of a game from Rousseau, 87.6 grade in this one. Defensive tackle Ed Oliver back in the lineup, 85.3 overall grade. Offensive tackle Spencer Brown with an 82.4. Daquan Jones, their other defensive tackle, with an 81.8. Really good day just for the defensive line overall for the Buffalo Bills. Quarterback Josh Allen, a 75.7 overall grade in this one. And then Tennessee's side of things, tight end Josh Wiley with an 86.2 to top the list. He was the only Tennessee Titan to grade in the 80s, though. Cornerback Terrell Baker Jr. next on the list with a 74.7. Jeffrey Simmons at number 3 with a 72.8. Arden Key, their edge rusher, at 71.5. And then Nick Vanette, the other tight end. Big tight end day for the Tennessee Titans at 70.0. Quarterback Mason Rudolph, who's starting for the injured Will Levis, 46.3. So not better than most of the Levis weeks that we see there. Stat that told the story. What do we got?
All right, so this is about the Bills because we know what Tennessee is, and there's some things that I kind of question with Tennessee here in the middle of the game I'll get into. But why did they trade for Amari Cooper? Because they need someone who can separate one-on-one, right? I mentioned when we broke down Bills-Texans, the Texans gotten a lot more man coverage than they usually do, and Khalil Shakir was out, and the Bills were an absolute mess on offense, right? What was it? Josh Allen went 9 for 30 or whatever that was. They needed someone to separate. Now, the Titans did not run a single snap of man coverage in the first half of this game, which is good. They were up 10-7 at halftime. The Titans were playing a good game in the first half. They come out in the second half. They get to a 4th and 2, I believe it was, at their own, somewhere in their own 40s, right? And they go for it, and they run right down the middle like they did on 3rd down. They didn't get it, and they gave the Bills a bunch of momentum, okay? I'll go with the scheme, and then I'll go with the thing with playing in Buffalo, okay? Josh Allen. Then all of a sudden after that, the Titans decided to start playing man coverage. Okay, so now we go, okay, Amari Cooper maybe gets a shot now, or Keon Coleman gets a shot now, one-on-one. Josh Allen against man coverage, 5 for 9, 112 yards, a touchdown, and 2 big-time throws. Okay, 2 big-time throws in 9 attempts. You saw the signature plays in this game were what? The Amari Cooper touchdown, right? What was it? Keon Coleman was telling him to play right before the snap,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
But it just, look, run this route and you'll beat your man. It's
one-on-one. That's football, baby.
Absolutely. It's just good teamwork. You like that,
It
right?
is. I
mean, Keon Coleman made a couple of big plays. The one-handed catch in a one-on-one situation. All of the signature plays, those two, the Dalton Kincaid corner route that was caught inside the 5-yard line, all the signature plays in this game came from the Bills beating man coverage. Now, I know they're playing the Titans. It's not the best secondary in football by any means, but this is big for the Bills to get Amari Cooper in more of these situations where, look, is he going to know the full playbook right away? Obviously not. He didn't know it, and he still scored a touchdown. He's been there for like 4 days. But you're talking about a team that needed that guy to win one-on-one. And when you have that guy who can win one-on-one, then it all trickles down, right? The depth of the secondary then starts playing the depth of the receivers. Because we don't question the Bills' depth of weapons. They have a lot of different guys who can make plays, but they need that one guy sometimes that they can go to one-on-one. I thought that Amari Cooper touchdown was obviously it was the play of the game because it got the Bills right back. And it was a whole big thing, right? But I think it gave them the lead. It was the first touchdown in the second half. You're just talking about a team that needed that guy because they lost that guy in Stephon Diggs, right? They traded him to Houston. Mm-hmm. Now you have it. The only other thing I question with Tennessee in this game is why did they go for that 4th down on their first drive of the second half when you had this game played at your pace? They could have punted the ball. They were up 10-7. They were playing good defense. And why did they suddenly go to man coverage when they didn't run it a single play in the first half? It just seemed odd to me because the one thing you don't want to do in Buffalo, what happens when you play the Bills in Buffalo, it's an avalanche, is that if you let them get that crack of momentum.
No, it does feel like it when you're playing
It just
in Buffalo.
doesn't it every time the Bills are in a home game.
Yep.
And they just need that one crack of momentum, and then it's just this avalanche. It's a different thing playing in Buffalo. And that 1 4th down stop, that was the crack. That was it. You gave them the ball at your 40 on a 4th down. You didn't need to go for it all. Then you start playing man coverage because I don't know why. You were playing good defense in the first half. The Bills had 85 yards in the first half. I mean, to change it, to go for that 4th down and then to change it up knowing you had Mason Rudolph and you were playing the slow-paced game that you wanted to, I didn't really get. But this was about the Bills and their receivers, at least in the handful of reps that they were able to, winning one-on-one, which they weren't doing the previous 3 weeks. I think getting Cooper made an immediate difference.
No, I love the shout out there. I mean, my most impressive is Mari Cooper as well, just because he's able to come in and, again, the early return on investment was huge, especially, like you said, winning against man coverage. And I love this trade because you're almost just trading for the savviness, right, of understanding not just how to beat man coverage, but also, he's going to be great in zone as well. There were so many great moments when he was in Cleveland even this season where he's finding those soft spots. He's exactly where he needs to be. And I talked about the times in which the Bills offense really struggled this season. It felt like Josh didn't 100% trust his receivers to be where they were supposed to be or should have been, especially when Khalil Shakir was out of the lineup. So now you have a player that I feel like is a go-to that just elevates everyone else around them, and I feel like it's going to be huge. Cooper, 89.9 receiving grade, 5 targets, 4 catches, 66 receiving yards. This is also the stat that I loved. 41.7 threat percentage. They got this guy on the field, and they said, we're throwing you the football today, brother. Like that 41.7, the guy joined the team, what was it, 5-6 days ago? So I love the immediate connection. It was so great for this passing offense, and we're seeing the best version of what the Bills can do in the passing game with this current lineup, the way that it is constructed. The stat that told the story for me was the Bills' defense. What a fantastic day from the defense. We highlighted some of the players along the defensive line who were in their top 5 as top 5 graded players there. 59.1 pass rush grade as a team that was 4th in the NFL for Week 7. 23 total pressures as a team that was 3rd in the NFL. Specifically, Greg Rousseau, 86.6 pass rush grade, 11 total pressures from Greg Rousseau. Dave Solfaro, our Do Everything guy here at PFF, he just shouted this out to me in a message. He said, hey, those 11 total pressures from Greg Rousseau, that is a career high from him. So already a fantastic ascendant year from Greg Rousseau when they really needed somebody to step up and be a difference maker week in and week out on this defensive line. And it looks like Greg Rousseau can be that guy. So the Bills winning up front the way that they did this week was huge for them, winning a game that we knew they should have won. But man, 34-10, I mean, that's a statement game, like you mentioned. I see that Greg Rousseau is your most impressive here. So thoughts on Rousseau before we get to the most disappointing?
Yeah, no, I think it's a guy who we don't talk about him like one of the elite edge rushers in the league, but there are days when he looks at it and he's not far from it. Right now, 12th among all edge defenders in overall grade, the 11 pressures, like you mentioned. You could just feel, I think he had 6 other pass rush wins, too, beyond those 11 pressures. 36% pass rush win rate in this game. He was a dominant force in this game, and they need him to be that dominant force week in and week out for the most part. He has been, he's had trouble getting help from the inside and from the linebackers and stuff, but Rousseau is the one constant, I would say, on this defense. He's their best player. He proved it in this game.
Yep. Most disappointing for you?
If this Titans offense is going to succeed, I thought they ran the ball well pretty early in this game. Like the first half, they were up 10-7. Tony Pollard had it going for a half. It shut down in the second half when the Bills really got going. And the Bills, they ran, I think, more single high defenses than in any game this season, which I get.
They don't do a lot.
They don't.
Right.
That's not it. The Bills are solidly a cover 2 team, and they flipped the script in this game. But I still thought the Titans played. It's more to me about Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. Look, if you have these two guys on the outside, they got to succeed. Ridley had 3 catches for 42 yards, but most of that was on the play at the end of the first half where he gets credit for the yards, a lateral and all that. So DeAndre Hopkins had 1 catch for -2. You look at these two guys, really, they had 3 meaningful catches put together for 7 yards. They just can't win like that. I mean, you can't win with your top 2 receivers essentially getting 7 yards when you take out a circus play at the end of the first half. They need more out of them. I mean, they're not going to succeed because we've seen this too many times from the Titans. There are stretches of games where their offense looks functional, right? I think about like the first half against the Jets, first half against the Bears. They run the ball a little bit, they get it going, they kind of get in a rhythm, and then it just completely stalls on them because they just don't get consistent enough play. Yes, out of their quarterbacks, obviously, but they needed Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins to win a battle at some point in this game, and they just didn't do that.
Yeah, and if it's not going to work, there's another trade candidate, right? I don't think they're trading Ridley because they gave him the massive contract. Now I don't think anybody's trading for it, but do we see DeAndre Hopkins moved if things really just don't improve
Pittsburgh?
for the Tennessee Titans? Pittsburgh, Kansas City. Like, I think that there are a couple of teams where you could really think about it. And
Washington. That might be a fun one.
They're rolling, buddy. We'll get to Washington a little bit later in the show. They were rolling again this week. My most disappointing is just the Titans' run game. You touched on it a little bit. Pollard. Overall, you're right. First half was pretty good for him. -3 rushing yards on 6 carries in the second half.
Yep.
Not good. Total 16 carries, 61 yards in this game. Lowest EPA per rush in the league in Week 7. No matter how you slice it, whether it's Mason Rudolph out there or Will Levis, they're not going to win that way.
And I mentioned
they're just absolutely not going to win.
And I mentioned the avalanche for the Bills offensively. It's the same way defensively. The second when they made that first run stop, that first drive of the second half, the defense, too, they smelled blood in the water. It was just done from there. They pitched a shutout in the second half. You could just feel their defense. I mentioned all the single high, and they ran it a lot in the first half. You could feel them pressing even closer to the line of scrimmage. It felt like their whole team was within 4 yards of the line of scrimmage in the second half. They were just like, go ahead, Mason. Please throw it over the top. But just go for it. And when I tell you they dared him to, and they just wouldn't do it, it wasn't happening.
It's tough when the script on your team is that obvious, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Bills were one of those teams that you look at and you go, okay, well, they're not going to run cover one on us. They did. And so if the Bills are willing to run cover one on you,
it's a problem.
You've got a problem, and it might be tough for the Titans moving forward. Before we get to the next game, whenever you're hiring for your small business and you want to find quality professionals for that right role, you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. We do plenty of hiring here at PFF, and we know that it's not just about matching a resume with whatever the job role is. You're about trying to find the right person for your team, somebody who understands your brand, where you're going, not just when you're hiring, but also years into the future. LinkedIn, it's not just a regular job board. They'll help you find professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for roles, but could be open to the perfect one. And I think that sometimes those are the best employees that you can find. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit any other job site. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, simply put, you are looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses do get qualified candidates within 24 hours. We know that a lot of small businesses out there, they're wearing a ton of different hats. You guys might not have the time or the resources to really devote to making the hire that you want. That's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for their hiring. You can hire a professional like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/PFF. That is linkedin.com/PFF to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply there. Bengals-Browns. Bengals win this divisional game on the road. What was it? Do you have the stat off the top of your head? Hadn't Burrow not won in Cleveland or something like that?
They said something. Has it been?
Chad might be able to help us out with that.
It had been like 7 or 8. I heard something about 2,500 days, like 7 or 8 years since they had won in Cleveland.
Chad might be able to help us out for that. Cincinnati does get the win in this one at 21-14. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players for the Cincinnati Bengals to start this off. Edge rusher Trey Henderson at the top of the list, as he often is, 85.5 grade there. Wide receiver T. Higgins with an 82.8. And then wide receiver Jamar Chase with a 76.8. Defensive tackle B.J. Hill with a 71.5. And then there he is, rookie Chris Jenkins getting a rep here in the top 5. We'd love to see it. 70.7. Quarterback Joe Burrow in this game, a 67.5. And then on Cleveland's side of things, their top cornerback Denzel Ward was the top graded player in this game at a 90.2. Linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah with an 85.6, and then linebacker Jordan Hicks with an 81.0. Edge rusher Myles Garrett with a 79.2, and then offensive tackle Jack Conklin back in the lineup here. Good to see him there. 73.7. Deshaun Watson, before popping his Achilles and being out for the year, as it has been confirmed, 77.9 passing grade in this one. that was disappointing for me. I wanted to jump into that because that was one of the things that was the most impressive for me. That's also kind of like a most disappointing, a little hybrid here. Browns passing game actually wasn't bad in this one before Deshaun gets hurt. 15 for 17, 128 yards, and a 78.1 passing grade for Deshaun Watson. Who knows what the future holds for him with the Cleveland Browns now that he is out for the season. I don't really know why Dorian Thompson-Robinson was the QB2. Never really made sense to me. Jameis comes in, looks a lot better, grades a lot better.
I don't know why a lot of things are happening in Cleveland.
I think this will be Jameis's team at quarterback moving forward, and we'll see if we can get a bump. But the most impressive is the fact that, hey, Jack Conklin was back out there along the offensive line. We talked about how they need to get healthier in that area. Nick Chubb was back out there as well. No Amari Cooper, obviously, but the pass game was sort of humming when Deshaun was out there before he got hurt. So we'll have to monitor that moving forward. But a stat that told the story for you in this game, what do you got?
So, yeah, I mean, I get it with the Browns and the pass game and all that. One thing I'm watching with the Bengals every single week, because we know Burrow and Chase and Higgins are really good. By the way, I found the stat. First win for the Bengals in Cleveland since 2017. That was the last time.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. It's 2017. It's been 7 years since they won in Cleveland. Andy Dalton led them 31-7 over the Browns.
What was they doing in 2017? Playing a lot of Fortnite. That's what happened.
Man, that's a long time.
And that's
ago.
about it.
What was it? That was like my first year coaching high school, I think it was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Been a while.
All right.
Anthony Johnson Jr. on that team.
Nice.
Yeah, 2017.
Good pull.
Yeah, good pull. St. Pete High. Anyway, what am I doing? Bengals defensive line, right? Bengals D-line. Yeah, this is the unit I'm watching every single week because of the struggles they had earlier in the year, right? I mean, I just want to see them play better. This was the part, again, I told you earlier a few weeks ago, T. Higgins was going to get healthy. Joe Burrow was going to figure it out. He's one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in football. Jamar Chase is obviously really good. He just wants to get paid. I wasn't worried about the offense. This D-line was concerning me, but maybe it's starting to ease my worries a little bit. 69.6 overall grade for the unit. Their 3rd straight week with a new season high. I think you've got Trey Hendrickson, who was great in this game. He's my most impressive. Anytime I get an FAU legend as my most impressive, feel good about it. 85.5 overall, 9 pressures and 2 sacks in this game. He's got to be the primetime guy, but the other guys are helping too. I think B.J. Hill's played a lot better the last couple weeks. He was good in this game. Rookie Chris Jenkins from Michigan, he's been solid, had a 70 grade in this game. Sam Hubbard on the other side of Hendrickson, you got to give me something, right? You got to be better than you were earlier in the year. Give me something, 65.7. I can live with that. That's at least a starter, a guy I can have on the field. This defensive line is, to me, going to be the key to their season. Now, is it the best offense they played? Absolutely not. Is it the best offensive line they played? Absolutely not. But this is the unit. To me, we know Burrow and Chase and Higgins are going to be good. We know they can get in shootouts. They've already lost a couple of shootouts. This D-line, if they're going to go out there and not get mauled like they were earlier in the year, gives the Bengals a chance to make the playoffs. That's what it has to be. They'll make the rest of the defense better. This is the unit that struggled more. I know all the hate. I know I've gotten a lot of people on my case about being so optimistic about Joe Burrow, but the facts are he's one of the 4 best quarterbacks in football. And when you have a top 4 quarterback in football, you should not miss the playoffs. If you are, there's probably many other reasons for it. And the biggest reason they got off to that slow start was their D-line. If they start playing better now, if they start playing more often, something like they did in this game, they will get to the postseason. They will find a way in there with Burrow leading the way, Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. They just have to be respectable on defense. I thought they were good up front in this game in a matchup where they were supposed to be good up front, and if Hendrickson's going to be the dominant player, that's what he needs to be. That's why they pay him. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league. Bengals D-line gets credit for me again for the 2nd week in a row.
I think the stat that told the story is Joe Burrow quoting Thanos as best as he can, saying, I am inevitable in this game. Because you talk about, not being able to get a win in Cleveland since 2017 despite playing them there at least once a year.
Seemed like they knew it too.
And of course they knew it. And everybody talks about, dude, look, I think athletes talk about we don't listen to that crap. We don't listen to the media. They know.
That one they knew, but
these guys, they are highly competitive.
I think Charlie Jones played a big part in breaking that, though. That first, when you get a big kickoff return like that on the road.
Well, of course, because in the first half they didn't have anything other than that.
Yeah.
My whole point of the Bengals offense being inevitable, first quarter passing grade 66.5 as a team. Second quarter passing grade 48.1, okay? The Bengals were not moving the football. They didn't have anything outside of that Charlie Jones return. Third quarter, though, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, 90.3 passing grade. It will eventually work for the Bengals. They're too talented. Joe Burrow's too talented. T. Higgins is too talented. Jamar Chase is too talented. It will eventually break. You're not going to hold this version of the Bengals. Maybe the version of the Bengals that we saw through the first 1 or 2 weeks in the season that sort of wasn't ready for the NFL season to start, that's a different story. But the Bengals that we have right now in current day, you're not going to be able to hold them out for 4 straight quarters. It's just not going to happen. They're going to break loose on you. It's just a matter of how often they do it through a 4-quarter stretch. This one, it took to the second half, but they were able to break the levees and the floodgates were able to open for that offense specifically in that fourth quarter. So I agree with you completely. That is the stat that told the story, is that Cleveland was able to hold them pretty well, but once it came down to, hey, they don't really have any quarterbacks that are going to be able to play well enough for them in the second half, and the Bengals offense figured it out as we knew that they would. That's how you get the difference in this football game. What about you? What's the most disappointing? I think we should run to, because you already talked about Hendricks.
Yeah, I mean, no matter who the Browns quarterback is, and we don't even know who it'll be next week, realistically, they have to be able to run the ball. And once again, they just didn't look. 21 carries for 77 yards in this game, but 46 of those 77 were on 2 read option keeps by Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So otherwise, there are 19 other carries. You're talking about 31 yards, and you're talking about 0.1 yards before contact per attempt across 19 other carries. I mean, it's not sustainable. Whether you have your starting quarterback, whether it's, obviously it won't be Deshaun Watson, whether it's Jameis or it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson or it's whoever else they might find on the street, if they're not going to get literally anything before contact up front, they're going to continue to look the same on offense. It's really not going to change at all. I know, everybody's talking about the quarterback situation, but this is a team-wide offensive problem. They've shown us all year that they're one of the worst, if not the worst, offense in football, and there's more than one reason for that, and their run game is one of them.
Yeah, I think I'll go to the Bengals run game. I'll flip to the other side of the script as my most disappointing here, because where I talk about the passing game is inevitable every single week, I believe that. In order for them to climb out of the hole that they have dug themselves, they have to run the ball better. And they have at times this season. I'm not trying to say that it's all been terrible, but 37.5 run blocking grade as a team in this game. Giants were the only team this week that was worse. I mean, it has to be way better than that. They're going to have to rely on the run game a little bit more than they do now. Right now, I think, sure, you want to have the ball in Joe Burrow's hands as much as possible, but to me, if you're going to complete this comeback and make it into the playoffs, you've got to get a little bit more from specifically the guys up front when it comes to run blocking. So,
just thinking, is there a trade? Are there any running back trades to be made? Is there someone they could go and get?
Well,
I know they need to block better up front. Obviously,
I was going to say the thing is, it's not the backs. Like, I think Chase Brown is good enough,
and this might not be the most fair game to just do a widespread judgment on them. Obviously, they're bad in this game. They didn't run block well, but they also just never blocked the Browns well. Right?
Not many do.
Yeah, not many do, and especially the Bengals. So it's part of the reason they haven't won there since 2017. It's just a thought I had. I'm like, is there somebody they could add to add a spark to it anyway, even if it's somebody who could maybe run on the outside? But no, you're absolutely right. There wasn't a whole lot of balance. And you mentioned it. They didn't score an offensive point in the first half of this game. If they didn't have Charlie Jones with that opening kick return, this game could have looked a lot different.
Hey, look, Walt brought up Corey Dillon earlier in the show. Corey Dillon,
Cincinnati.
I don't know what he's doing. Bring him back. We already got the jersey for it.
Somebody's going
to wear the throwbacks in his first game.
Somebody's going to end up with Corey Dillon in the next couple weeks, aren't they? It's going to happen by the deadline. We got Devontae Adams was the most likely guy to be traded. We got to cut. Now we're getting okay. Got it. Corey Dillon, get your pads ready.
It's more likely somebody gets Brady, which minority owner of the Raiders. Raiders in the quarterback. Little player owner thing?
Listen, these are just rumors.
That can't be possible, right?
No, they said it's not allowed.
That he can't play?
Yeah.
Why? It's not like he's trying to win. Like, isn't that what he's doing as an owner? Why wouldn't he be able to play?
I don't know, unless he's on like Undercover Boss or something. It'd be kind of hard for him to do, though.
I don't think we'd miss Tom Brady. It'd be pretty difficult to do.
All I'm
saying is, why is it a rule? Right?
That I don't know.
As an owner,
I forget the explanation.
Right, like, as an owner, if you just want your team to win.
If as an owner you want to go out there and suit up, you should be able to suit up.
100%. 100%.
I think that sounds like isn't that stuff they did like 100 years ago?
What?
Like wasn't it like player, owner, manager things?
I think so. Yeah.
I know they had it in baseball.
Which again, what's the issue? As an owner, what are you giving away trade secrets while you're playing the game?
I mean, it's just never been a thing. Most owners aren't Tom Brady.
Tom Brady's also never been a thing when you think about it.
That's true.
It's 'cause we're all
He's done a lot of things that haven't been done before.
It's true.
They need to change that rule then. We need a 47-year-old Tom Brady suiting up for the Raiders.
Walt, you're a Raiders fan. I want to hear from you. Would you take Tom Brady right now as owner quarterback?
Oh, yeah.
And why can't it happen? Somebody get me answers. Somebody in the chat get me answers while we talk about one of the best games that we saw yesterday, the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. This one is phenomenal. I already cannot wait for the rematch. Maybe there will be a rematch of the rematch when we get into the playoffs. I mean, these teams are that good, and this game was that fun. Detroit ends up getting the win here, 31-29. We'll talk about their top 5 graded players first because they got the win. Safety Brian Branch, just an unbelievable last couple of weeks from him. Back on the top of this list with a 92.7 overall grade. Center Frank Ragnow with a 90.1. Wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown with an 88.9. Gator grade. Linebacker Alex Anzalone with a 78.2. Running back Jahmyr Gibbs with a 77.5. And then quarterback Jared Goff in this game, 76.9. A very solid grade there. And then on the Minnesota side of things, edge rusher John Grenard, Gator grade, 92.1. Great linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel with an 80.3. Running back Aaron Jones, 77.9. Safety Josh Metellus with a 73.5. Wide receiver Justin Jefferson is 72.2. And then quarterback Sam Darnold, a 76.4. A lot of things that we could break down in this one, but through everything, Dalton, what is the stat that told the story here?
It's the fact that in a micro and a macro sense, any way you want to look at this, if this Lions offense gets hot, they're the best offense in football. And you talk about late in the second and early in the third quarter of this game. Okay, they had 4 straight touchdown drives. They ran 28 plays on those drives, and they picked up 294 yards. I mean, they're running 10.5 yards per play for a 4-drive stretch. They're just unstoppable. Jared Goff on those 4 drives, 14 of 15, a $197, 2 touchdowns, and a 92 passing grade. The offense as a whole had a 92 overall grade in that stretch. I mean, you're just talking about a team when they get it rolling, and we've kind of been waiting for them to get it rolling like this, and now they're really rolling. This is the best offense in football. They're so loaded. They have the best O-line in football. Jared Goff, when he's hot like this, right now Jared Goff's playing, I mean, what he's played like the last 4 games is an MVP candidate.
Insanely efficient.
St. Brown, I mean, and look, this is a tough team to play against because of Brian Flores, right? But I think we know the Vikings don't have a ton of elite talents on their on their defense, especially in the secondary. When you've got a scheme like the Lions have with Ben Johnson running the show and Goff executing, and you have just absolute dudes, right? Like St. Brown, like Jamison Williams, like Jahmyr Gibbs. They haven't even gotten Sam Laporta going yet. You got this offensive line. It's a level of talent when they're executing at this level that honestly cannot be stopped. It just can't. Right now, with all the Niners injuries and the Chiefs and kind of playing a more conservative brand of ball, and the Ravens, sometimes they can be a bit one-dimensional, even though they've been really good. We know Lamar's great. This Lions offense right now is best offense in football. And when they get hot, I don't think there's an answer for it because they just have too many tools in the box.
The stat that told the story for me is sort of a stat that has been growing over the last couple of weeks that came into this game, and that is Goff's confidence. You know, we talk about Goff on this show, and I think some Lions fans, read it as disrespect, how, some of the grades that we have for Jared Goff are a little bit lower, and I'll sort of get it in that context, but you can't deny what the man is doing in this offense and how well he is commanding this offense specifically, and how the ball gets to go basically everywhere it needs to when it needs to get there. 90.8 adjusted completion percentage over the last 3 games, 90.9 adjusted completion percentage under pressure over the last 3 games. And that's an area where we have criticized Jared Goff in the past. Now, look, over the last 3 games, all of his turnover-worthy plays have come when he has been pressured. All of his big-time throws have come when he has been kept clean. So that we do have to, of course,
that sounds context. Like Jared Goff.
Right,
that sounds like the same Jared Goff we've always known.
But still,
yeah.
The passing grade under pressure is in the high 60s this year compared to low 40s that it has been in the past. And that means that, yes, okay, he's throwing the turnover-worthy plays still when he is pressured, but in the in-between, outside of those throws, and it's only 2 over the last 3 games when he's been under pressure, the ball is going where it needs to go, even under pressure. Goff is so confident with his hot reads, and okay, if pressure's coming, okay, I don't have time to get all the way through the progression. I got to look to exactly where my hot read is immediately. I either give the guy a chance or the ball's going in the ground. We're going to fight another day. They are humming right now, and I think that you are right when you say that this is the best offense in football, the way that it has been playing over the last couple of weeks, specifically when you throw in the run game as well. And I know David Montgomery had a disappointing fumble that I'm sure that he is still thinking about right now as we are speaking, but he's going to be a major part of this rushing attack moving forward. We know how dynamic Jahmyr Gibbs is. You've talked about the offensive line. It's just humming, man. And to me, that confidence in which Jared Goff played against Brian Flores' defense on the road in Minnesota cannot be understated, in my opinion.
Yeah, no. Is there a more consistent play in football than Jared Goff being under center, taking that straight drop play action, and just zipping that 15-yard in route right past whoever linebacker?
It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
It's always just St. Brown.
We saw it, I think, 4, 5, 6 times yesterday. Every time I saw it, I thought it was a replay. It looks the exact same every single time, and yet it always works. It might be the best play in football right now. Any 15-yard in from the Lions, it's unstoppable, especially because you have to obviously respect the run game. And, if they're running that action off that right side where Penei Sewell is, what are you going to back off and be on your heels against Penei Sewell? No, you get killed. So, literally, you might actually get killed. So, no, I mean, it's the combination of scheme and talent makes them, it really is, I think it's the scariest offense in football right
My most impressive is Brian Branch. Just unbelievable again in this game. He has had an insane season. I saw a Dane Brugler tweet, who works for The Athletic, does an incredible job covering the NFL draft. I'm sure everybody reads his great work. And, he had a funny tweet a couple of weeks ago when Brian Branch had that incredible game. And he goes, I still cannot believe that Brian Branch went number 45 overall. 44 times in the draft, NFL teams went, we're good. It's crazy. He was this player at Alabama.
Yeah.
He was this player at Alabama. He was a top 20 player in the class. You could have made an argument for him to be top 15, maybe
you know
even top
what
10,
I think it is. You know what I think it is again, though? Most of his snaps at Alabama were in the slot. And if you continue to devalue guys who can have that sort of impact,
couldn't be this show.
No, it wouldn't be here. Slot corners are people too. Now he's playing a little more of a traditional safety role this year. But they knew he played some safety at Bama. He was back and forth, and he was so versatile. But there has to be a guy like that has to go in the first round. I don't care if he plays in the slot. It just doesn't matter. He's a wicked talented football player who's taking games over. We've seen it multiple times this year already.
As we saw on the graphic there, 92.7 overall grade, 91.2 coverage grade. Played 5 snaps at edge rusher. Linebacker, outside linebacker. 5 snaps at outside linebacker, 13 as a box defender, 6 in the slot, and 37 at free safety. Dude's a stud.
Yeah.
Incredible football player. 45 is egregious. NFL, you got to check yourself. Come on. We got to be drafting better than that. What about your most impressive?
I'll stay in the slot on offense. I mean, look, if there's anybody who doubts that Amon-Ra St. Brown is an elite receiver, is off the rails, because he's one of the best receivers in football. And this was a game when you needed that guy, that number one guy, to get through all the scheme and get through all the Vikings stuff and make plays anytime they needed it. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, 8 for 8. 8 catches, 8 targets, 112 yards, a touchdown, 3 for 3 in contested catches, 89.8 receiving grade. He's got everything. We saw everything in this game. We saw a deep touchdown. We saw him pick up 3rd and shorts on short routes. We saw the crosser that got him into field goal range. We saw contested catches. He's one of the best receivers in football, and I don't remember who said it, but I saw some conversation earlier this week about, he's just a slot guy, so he's not. No, that's not how this works. Like, I don't care if he's in the slot 80% of the time. This is one of the best receivers in football. He played like it in this game, and I'll go to the most disappointing just real quick, because it kind of just matches up with it. The Vikings coverage now, this was the first week where we really saw it kind of falter on him, because they don't have, and Harrison Smith is a great player, I think a future Hall of Famer. He's a little bit older, though. They don't have an elite player in their secondary right now, and it showed in this game. The Vikings, a 41.5 coverage grade. Goff had 3 incompletions all day, and 2 of them were batted down at the line of scrimmage. And the only one real incompletion was a go ball that Goff actually just missed. It was open. So the Vikings really struggled, especially, I mentioned, over the middle of the field. 3 safeties and 2 linebackers for the Vikings, all with coverage grades under 50. Lions attacked the middle of the field. St. Brown was a big part of that. All of that goes together. I don't understand. If there's someone out there that needs an explanation as to why St. Brown is an elite receiver, I don't know what you've been missing, because he's just straight up. I mean, if there's any guy on 3rd and 10 that I needed just a first down from right at the sticks,
right,
he might be the guy I pick. He's just that good.
I don't know how many other. I mean, it's basically like the conversation of if you need a third down catch, it's like Justin Jefferson and then maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
It's just that he is that productive.
He does everything
when it matters most. Over the middle of the field, to the sideline, deep, intermediate, everything. Man, he's unbelievable. My most disappointing in this game. None. I have no most disappointing. As the meme goes, absolute cinema. This was a phenomenal game. The next time these two teams play is Week 18. It's January 5th. It's Vikings at Detroit, and I pray that there is something on the line for this game. Could very well be the number 1 seed in the NFC. And that would be playoffs before the playoffs. That would be the best appetizer. What is the best appetizer?
Oh, man. Just in general?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I won't lie.
Because what's the best? I'm just saying, like, that's the best appetizer that you could possibly have before a meal. With, like, the mini playoffs.
I won't lie to you. I'm a mozzarella stick guy.
Yeah, mozz steak is good.
Stick.
You know, I think some people are going to say boneless wings. Wings are a meal to me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't usually. It's usually
my cousins think that it's sacrilegious that I just eat wings.
See, I'm a cheese guy though. I could go with a good queso beforehand too.
That's fair.
You hand me some chips.
But is queso like the best appetizer? Now I need to know this from the chat. What's the best appetizer? Because whatever the best appetizer is that you guys say in the chat, that is whatever Vikings Lions is.
You're just letting it roll. Okay.
That's
Especially if it's for a division title, our friends at
That's what I'm saying.
Our friends at NBC will have it for sure.
It's like that, if it's for a division title and maybe even the number 1 seed in the NFC, that's like steak before steak.
I would take an appetizer steak. Yeah.
Before steak.
Do you like a 6 ounce before a 10 ounce? I think that makes
different
sense.
cuts. At the same
yeah,
time.
just a smaller
like fillet
and
smaller
then a
steak,
ribeye. An appetizer steak.
You might be onto something here.
Yeah,
we might need to go into business.
If you just want 2 steaks, you go, but you don't want to look like a person. Oh, you're eating 2 steaks at the same time. Yeah, it's a baby steak, appetizer.
Somebody get Chris on the line. I got something else for him to invest in. We got steak before steak. Let's go to the Dolphins and the Colts is the next game here. The Colts win this game 16-10. Indianapolis' top 5 graded players in this one. Jalen Jones just on an absolute tear since I disrespected the jersey number that he chose at number 40. He's number 1 on this list with an 85.0. One of those stud slot corners that you've talked about before in Kenny Moore. He's number 2 on this list with an 83.4. Wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr., 75.3. Tight end Alec Ogletree with a 72.8. And then safety Julian Blackmon with a 72.2. Anthony Richardson in this game. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. 45.6, flipping sides to Miami. Tight end Jonnu Smith, an elite 91.2. Incredible day for Jonnu Smith there. Center, Aaron Brewer with an 89.7. Defensive tackle Calais Campbell with an 86.0. Teron Armstead, their offensive tackle, with an 81.2. And then number 5, to round it out, another slot cornerback, Kader Kohu, at a 77.3. Tyler Huntley in this game before he went out due to injury, 77.6. Like, he's playing. Snoop Huntley made a Pro Bowl. People forget that. Sad to tell the story here, Dalton. What do we got?
A lot of it in part because Tyler Huntley got hurt. The Dolphins in the second half, look, they got a 10-0 lead in this game early. They were looking pretty good early. The defense was rolling. The run game was rolling a little bit. Jalen Wright looked good in this game, but it shut down in the second half. You talk about 4.1 yards per play in the second half, a minus 0.621 EPA per play, which pretty much just means you're not moving the ball at all. 7 second-half drives, 3 punts, 2 fumbles, 1 turnover on downs, a missed field goal. The lack of being able to extend that lead beyond 10-0, beyond 10-3. I mean, it just speaks to where the Dolphins' offense is right now. Is that's pretty much all they have in them right now. Is and they beat New England 15-10, which is cool. Only 10 points in this game, kept the Colts in the game until they could just manufacture enough points to beat them. I mean, it is what it is. I think there's now rumors they're going to get Tua Tagovailoa maybe back next week.
Sounds like it.
And that'll change the entire equation because you've got a team that without him just cannot score. And it was especially evident in the second half in this game. And as we learned in New York last year, if you're a team that is employing Tim Boyle and he's on the field for you, you have some offensive issues. So getting Tua back, AFC still kind of wide open, especially with those wild card spots. Maybe you get hot. Maybe you get Hill and Waddle going. Maybe you can kind of just get back into the things the Dolphins do. But there really isn't much hope until he gets back.
No, and I think the stat that told the story is, in fact, what you were talking about here, but maybe at a little bit of a different angle. And it is the cavalry's kind of coming here with Tua. And, I think that if he's in the lineup, this team looks completely different because even with Tyler Huntley out there, like, it didn't look terrible. 0.231 EPA per pass in the first half of this game. That's the highest EPA per pass of any half that they had, including when Tua was on the field. So clearly, like, there is still something there with Miami. Now, is it too little too late for them? Maybe. I think they're going through certain injuries on the defensive side of the football as well. It's an uphill climb there for them. But this was a sliver of hope. Like, this was something where it was like, okay, if you put Tua into the offense that we saw this past week, they beat Indianapolis. I think they beat Indianapolis.
Oh, yeah. They would have beat, or they did beat New England, but it would have looked a lot better. No,
right. They beat Indianapolis in this game if Tua Tagovailoa plays, especially for how the rest of the team played, especially how they were able to run the ball. And that is the stat that told the story, because Indianapolis wins this game. I don't think they played very well. No. And they just happened to be playing against a team that, in the second half of the game, did not have a quarterback that is of starting caliber at the NFL level.
Oh, we've watched the same Colts game 2 weeks in a row. The same way with Tennessee last week. They just ceased to function in the second half. That's it. And the Colts just kind of hung in there until the game was over. That was pretty much it.
Most impressive. Who do you got?
I'll actually stay on the Dolphins side. How about I love sometimes getting these wily veterans in this most impressive part, right? We like the young guys too, but these older guys that keep playing well. How about Calais Campbell? He was a game wrecker. You watch Calais Campbell in the run game here. 90.2 run defense grade, 6 stops. I mean, from the very first play of the game, he was in on 18 run defense snaps. Trevor, he had 8 positive grades among those 18 snaps. I mean, Calais Campbell, he's another way. We talked about certain guys this year, Bobby Wagner, Harrison Smith, some of these older guys that you think, man, when are they going to get old? And they just don't. Calais Campbell's on that list, too. He was dominant against one of the best offensive lines, if not maybe a team that's been playing the best offensive line in football this year. He was a problem in the run game. He really caused a lot of issues for the Colts in this game throughout.
Jalen Jones, I got to give him the shout-out, right? Have to keep doing it.
You know what I need? Now I need more cornerbacks wearing 40s coming out of the draft. I need like Will.
I don't.
I need Will Johnson to come out of this draft.
No,
stop. Wearing number 40.
Shut up. This is horrendous. Don't speak this into the universe. Jalen Jones, though, wearing number 40, and he's playing really well. 69 snaps in this game, 85.0 overall grade, 84.6 coverage grade. I mean, he's in those 65 coverage snaps that he played, 17 yards allowed over the last 2 weeks. That's pretty crazy. So the 69 snaps that you see out there, that's the most. But
look what you did.
I know. Again, look at this. This didn't exist before us. Before I doubted, before I was the jinx. No, I'm kidding. I'm not taking anything away from Jalen. He's been playing well. I'm giving him his full credit. But just another really great performance for him. Obviously, he's number 1 on the list for Indianapolis because of it. I talked about it today where not a lot was going right with the Colts. And it seems to just continue to go right for Jalen Jones. So big shout out to him. He continues to play well. Most disappointing for me, I stole this one from you because I know you would have loved to talk about it because you're a big Anthony Richardson hater. But Anthony Richardson is disappointing. There's no other way to say it. 10 for 24 passing in this game, 57.1 adjusted completion percentage. It's not getting better. And he is still young. He missed a bunch of time last season. We don't even have a full season from him. I think there is even still time to believe that, hey, even if it continues to look bad this year, you could go into next year and he could realistically, with a full offseason, not having to rehab, not having to do all of that, that can improve his completion percentage. But we are trending in the direction of, okay, this is who you were at Florida. It's mostly who you were last year before you got hurt, and it is still who you are now. Now, again, he's missed a little bit of time even this year, so that's a little bit concerning when it comes to overall progression. It makes things a little bit muddy when you're trying to say, like, okay, do you give up on him? Is this always going to be who he is? I'm not ready to say that, but we are trending towards, okay, we are now mounting evidence that this is who you are going to be as a passer. And even though he had the 2 big-time throws in this game, he still shows you what he could be with a great arm talent. He needs to take steps forward. That is, like, I think that a lot of people are going to defend him and say, you got to give him more time, think of all the context. And I hear you. I agree with you. But we've got to start to see it. It needs to look a little bit better. Even if you gave me 2 or 3 games where it just looked much better this season, and the rest of them could look like this, I would tell you, all right, I got faith that he's going to kind of figure it out next season and we'll be in a better spot. But right now, we need to see more progress from Anthony Richardson on a down-by-down basis because we love the deep shots. But even going back to the conversation that we had about the Jacksonville Jaguars, it can't just be that. It has to be so much more for you to be efficient enough to win this league.
One, you have to complete passes. I don't care how talented you are. You have to complete passes. You're just not completing enough passes. And I just wonder, look, their offense, we just have to admit it, looks better with Joe Flacco in there. It was a bit of a struggle last week against Tennessee type game. Their offense looks better. It runs better with Joe Flacco. If, let's say, they are trying to make the playoffs, is there a possibility you just go, you know what, let's just try to make the playoffs with Joe? Or is that just not long-term productive enough to even bother with? Is Richardson's development this year just more, I don't want to say more important than winning, but kind of?
Yeah. I think Richardson's development is more important.
You'd rather just see it and go win 6 or 7 games.
I mean, they're already 4-3, right?
Well, right. But
they don't play in a great division.
But it feels like a team that could make the playoffs with Flacco, and a team that
I don't know.
I think their offense clearly runs smoother with him.
And I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I don't think it's enough of a guarantee that you go, yeah, we put Flacco in, we're making the playoffs, to do something like totally derail what would be your commitment to Anthony Richardson and sort of detriment to his progression. So that's sort of where I am with it. If you told me like it was a guarantee that they'd make the playoffs with Flacco, maybe we're having a different conversation, but it's not. I mean, the offense with Flacco in there, it wasn't exactly a potent offense.
Right.
It was more efficient. They completed more passes because Flacco's simply a veteran. But no, I'm not entertaining that at this point in time. Anyway, most disappointed for you. Who do you got?
Just the Dolphins wide receivers in general, and it's not a good quarterback situation, but I also think there's something odd about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle only getting 2 targets apiece in this game. I would just think maybe, especially against this defense, against the Colts defense, it's really struggled that you would have a lot of design stuff just to get those guys the ball, right? And I just feel like I'm not seeing a lot of those design screens and things like that right now in this offense where you can just let those guys work after the catch, right? Because yards after catch is the Dolphins' signature. And for those guys to not really get opportunities and for their wide receiving core as a whole to have 4 catches for 28 yards, it feels like even with the terrible quarterback situation, there could be a more optimal use of those guys, especially against a team like the Colts who've been really struggling through the air.
All right, so that's that game. Before we get to the next one, there is so much that happens in the NFL every single week. Now we're ramping it up big time when it comes to the trade deadline and what's going to happen. Football season is crazy. And this season, to keep up with all of it, we are listening to a new podcast called The Offensive Line with Annie Agar. Annie is an NFL insider. You probably know her from the uncomfortable team meetings on social series that you'll see on TikTok and Instagram and all that kinds of stuff. She's all over the timeline. The Offensive Line with Annie kicks back with NFL stars, the celebrity super fans throughout the NFL season. They do things like unpacking the week's lines, odds, spreads, all with the sharp wit and banter that you love from her content. So she's got great guests that are there on the show as well. The pod is packed with all sorts of humor. It's must listen every single week to keep up with the latest NFL news and culture. And again, especially because the trade deadline's coming up, that's something you want to keep your eye on. Follow the Offensive Line on the Wondery app or wherever you guys get your podcasts. You could also access bonus episodes and listen ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus. All right, Walt was yelling at us to get to the next game because he didn't want to hear about Dolphins-Colts anymore. So, Walt, I'm going to throw a curveball at our production team, and I'm just going to accelerate that we're going to talk about the Raiders. All right? Raiders are next.
We'll work back to, okay, yeah.
And then we're going to work back to the other one.
All right.
Because Walt's got to hear what we're going to say about the Raiders.
We got to make sure they're awake back there anyway.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. We got to throw them a curveball every now and then. It can't just be, we're going to follow this. We're going to follow this.
What are they going to do? Come out here and argue with us?
That'd probably make for a great clip. Might see it on TikTok later.
Stay back there.
Raiders, Rams. Who are you afraid of back there? Eli? Is he going to come after you?
All of them. Yeah. Come on now.
That's true. That's true.
They're sitting in that room listening to us for 2.5 hours. They're probably
I'd also be angry.
They go nuts every Monday. And then Eli's got to deal with Max and me on the other 2 days.
That is tough.
It's only week 8, week 7.
That'll do things to him, man.
That'll do it. Yeah.
Raiders, Rams. Rams win this game 20-15. Let's take a look at the Rams' top 5 graded players here for this one. Kobe Durant, 94.6 grade. Wow. Safety Quentin Lake with a 80.9. 94.6 is going to be one of the highest cornerback grades we have from a single game this entire season. Cornerback Akilla Witherspoon with a 74.0. Safety Cam Curl with a 73.6. And then Bo Limmer, their center, to round it out at number 5 with a 73.3. Matthew Stafford, not his best day, 48.9. And then on the other side of things, the Vegas Raiders linebacker Robert Spillane's having a great season. Another great game for him, 87.6 overall grade. Jordan Meredith, their guard, 85.1. Tight end Brock Bowers continues to be a stud for this team with an 85.0 overall grade. Max Crosby, surprise, surprise, is on this list at an 80.4 at number 4 overall. And then number 5, Nate Hobbs, is 79.5. Gardner Minshew, oh boy, 27.8 passing grade in this one. Sat that told the story. What do we got?
So it's gonna be kind of weird here because it's really gonna end up being that I kind of have 2 most impressive players. But the stat that tells a story for me is you mentioned Kobe Durant there with that 94.7 grade, and that really came in one avalanche sequence in the second quarter. This is one of the greatest quarters you will ever see one player have. Okay, first of all, early in the quarter, the Raiders have the ball down in the red zone. Gets a pass breakup on a slant that holds them to a field goal, right? So it's 3-0 Raiders. All right, you go down, you get down in the red zone, but you hold them to 3, kind of a win for the defense. Cool. Then, later in the quarter, gets an interception as Gardner Minshew's rolling to his left because Aiden O'Connell got hurt in this game and Minshew was in there. Minshew rolls to his left, throws a pick, trying to get a ball to Brock Bowers. Durant dives and picks it off. That leads to a Rams touchdown. Then, he comes off, next drive, he comes off the right side as a blitzer, strips Gardner Minshew of the ball, gets the strip sack. Cam Curl picks it up, runs it in for a touchdown. Kobe Durant was directly responsible for the score late in the second quarter, being 14-3, and that was pretty much the game from there. He just had, honestly, one of the wildest quarters of football you will see a cornerback play, and that was it. And from there, it was kind of casual. The Raiders' offense is a mess, and they couldn't come back. The Rams just kind of held on despite all of their injuries. But that sequence from Kobe Durant basically single-handedly won him this game.
No, it's a great shout-out, and obviously him getting a 94.6 grade. I don't think we'll see a cornerback with a grade higher all season long. That's just insanely high. So take over, guy, and you mentioned 14-3 being the score. To be able to say that cornerback was able to be a catalyst for that,
an interception and a strip sack, doing a little bit of everything.
It's true. Stat that told the story for me, Raiders quarterback play. It's bad. It's horrendous. It's awful. They can't win football games. They're not going to win football games. This is a team that is destined for a top 5 overall pick, if not a top 3 overall pick, because they simply do not have a quarterback that can play at the NFL level consistently.
Well, it seems like Mark Davis was already having conversations with the next one.
Oh, Tom Brady?
With Shador. Oh, well, it could have been Tom Brady, too. Maybe he brings Tom Brady
right.
down. No, bring Tom Brady down to mentor Shador.
I don't know if either of these guys are going to be on the team next year. Aiden might be because he's on a rookie contract, so maybe you just don't get rid of him but Minshew, 29.1 passing grade versus the Rams, 3 interceptions, 3 turnover-worthy plays, including a fumble. Aiden O'Connell now broken thumb, so he's going to be out. I think it's like 6 to 8 weeks or something like that, so it's going to be a lot more Minshew in this one, and this team just is not good enough to win with Minshew at quarterback, I don't think. It's just the floor is so low for this team, unfortunately. And, we got the chat talking about Antonio Pierce. I do feel bad for Antonio Pierce.
What is he supposed to do?
Because it is one of those things where it's like, I kind of think he gets fired at the end of the year. And I don't. There's so many reasons to think that it's not entirely his fault.
Is the idea just to get an offensive coach to go with a new quarterback?
The idea is to get something different, completely different. Because he was great as an interim when he was able to come in and obviously give the team a spark because Josh McDaniels was not giving them that at all. So you move on from him and you get a guy that players absolutely love. They're able to come together a little bit, and the year ends and you go, okay, well, we love playing for this guy. And I think that I don't know. It feels like it was now just an emotional decision to hire him. But again, I go back to what more is he supposed to do? You gave him bottom of the barrel quarterbacks to try to win football games in this league in a really competitive division, in a really competitive conference.
It looks like the Falcons from last year.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like the Jets. Right? I mean, the defense isn't as good, but
this year they have a quarterback.
They don't. No. I'm talking about last year.
Oh, yeah.
They had no quarterback options. So you almost and that's why Robert Saleh came into the year still as the head coach, because you go, what more was he supposed to do? And unfortunately, I look at Antonio Pierce's situation, and I feel like he's going to be a scapegoat for it, because whoever you're bringing in next to quarterback, it looks like it's going to be a drafted guy. you're going to want to pair him with an offensive guy.
Yeah.
You're not, and I mean, so
And the one
he
thing
can get fired.
The one thing they do have working on offense right now is Brock Bowers. I'll tell you, whoever the next offensive coach, if there's an offensive coach coming in or whoever it may be, whatever happens with the offense, whoever is coaching them is sure glad they have Brock Bowers, because in this game, another 10 catches for 93 yards, 6 of them for first downs, 86.6 receiving grade. He is the highest graded tight end in football right now, the rookie Brock Bowers, by a pretty decent margin over, I believe, George Kittle's the next one right after him. He is as good as advertised. He was, Max Chadwick called him the greatest college tight end ever. And he's off to a flying start in his career despite this situation. Their offense right now is basically just Brock Bowers trying to get first downs. And he's doing a hell of a job of it. For him to walk in there, and rookie tight ends very often have a big transition period. There's just been none for him. He's just terrific. He's already one of, if he's not number one like the grading says he is, he's already one of the 5 best tight ends in football.
My most impressive in this one's Kyren Williams. Was able to sort of extend some NFL streaks this past week. 9 touchdowns in at least 9 touchdowns in 9 consecutive games. That's one shy of the NFL record held by Greg Bell for 10 games with a consecutive rushing touchdown. He also passed Eric Dickerson for the most touchdowns in Rams history for a player in his first 17 starts. So just an incredible job by Kyren Williams. It seems as though throughout all of the injuries, sort of to the passing game and the passing game being up and down, the offensive line included, Kyren Williams has been there for him. Finishes this game with 76 yards on 21 carries, 2 more touchdowns this week. So Kyron's steady presence, I think, for this team has just meant so much, and I feel like it's an underrated part of why the Rams are sort of still in this and still alive, and why you still believe them. My most disappointing here in this game, outside of the Raiders, which we already talked about, it's just disappointing throughout the season, but it is those Rams early injuries. Because what is this season for the Rams if the offensive line doesn't get decimated and if Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp don't get hurt? A completely different season for the Rams.
That's a lot of talent on the sidelines.
And a lot of those guys are getting healthy, and this team's going to be a force toward the second half of the season. They're going to have their sights on a playoff run, and at the very least, they're going to play spoiler for a couple of teams that are trying to get into the playoffs. So it's just a bummer that they've had to go through these early injuries, because I think the team's totally different, and they're probably a playoff team, probably a much higher percentage of them being a playoff team if that stuff doesn't happen. Most disappointing for you before we move on.
To be honest, it sounds kind of bad, but just everything about the Raiders offense except for Brock Bowers. It's just, like you mentioned, there's nothing there. You trade Devontae Adams. Jacoby Myers has been hurt. You don't have much of a run game. You don't have a quarterback. There's just not. This is an offense that needs to be rebuilt outside of the tight end position.
Yep, I agree with you. Eagles-Giants, next game that I want to get to. Huge win for the Philadelphia Eagles. This was a Saquon Barkley homecoming game, and he played well in this one. Let's take a look at Philly's top 5 graded players on the day. Wide receiver A.J. Brown's at the top of the list with an 89.4. Cornerback Cooper DeJean, putting some respect on some slot corners' names, with an 86.3. Running back Saquon Barkley is on this list at number 3 at an 84.3. Defensive tackle Milton Williams with a 78.7. And then linebacker Nakobe Dean with a 78.1. Quarterback Jalen Hurts in this one, a 78.2 overall grade. And then we go over to New York. Dexter Lawrence at the top of the list, as he has been most of the time this season, it feels like, 83.7. Edge rusher Elijah Chapman with an 80.1, and then Brian Burns at number 3 with a 78.2. 4, Andrew Phillips, their cornerback, with a 77.1, and then safety Tyler Nubin with a 76.1. Quarterback Daniel Jones, a 62.8 overall grade in this game. Got replaced by Drew Lock as the game was winding down. Dalton Stats told the story. What do we got?
Well, as you see from the top 5 for the Giants, all being on defense. Their offense, just like we mentioned the Raiders needing to be rebuilt, their offense, other than Malik Neighbors, just needs to be rebuilt. 2.2 yards per play for an entire game is, I don't know that I've seen that yet as far as I've been doing both of these shows. 1 drive in this game for the Giants that was longer than 21 yards, 15 design carries for 52 yards, no completed passes over 11 air yards. I talked before about the Falcons living in the bubble. The Giants are living dead in the center of the bubble, and a very small one, because there is just no explosiveness. There's not much up front. There's not much threat when it comes to the quarterback. We have hit the point in the year I think we thought we were going to at some point with the Giants offense, and it's going to have to be just totally rebuilt outside of Malik Neighbors when we get to the end of the year, and we are already there in week 7 because 2.2 yards per play for an entire game is something. It's really something is the best way I could put it.
Yeah, and I think the offensive line goes a long way into that, right? Andrew Thomas no longer in the lineup due to injury, and when you look at this team, they're a big reason why you have that 2.2 yards per play average, 37.4 run blocking grade as a team. That was worst in the league in the NFL in week 7. 4 out of their 5 offensive linemen had overall blocking grades in the 50s. And then Josh Azudu in for Thomas at left tackle. He gave up 2 sacks and 3 pressures in this game. It already looked rough with Thomas in there. And now without Thomas, that's your lone good offensive lineman. It's just going to look really ugly for the Giants, I feel like, as this season goes on. And so it's hard to find much hope that the offense is going to get too much better until the offensive line plays a lot better. So to me, that is totally the stat that told the story. It did not allow the Giants to be competitive at all whatsoever in this game, and will continue to be unless they can figure it out. My most impressive in this game, I'll shout out the slot receiver. I'm shouting out Cooper DeJean, who I loved coming into this class. He was my CB2. He was a top 10 overall player for me. He gets 42 snaps in this game in the slot, 87.4 coverage grade. He had 3 targets, gave up 3 catches for only 3 yards allowed. I mean, he was a stud in this one, and I think that his play in the slot is going to be so advantageous for this group moving forward because they're going from these smaller slot players like Avonte Maddox was in that spot before, LeBlanc was in this spot before in years past, right? And it's just been these smaller corners that have often played in the slot for them. Well, DeJean's a bigger corner. He's somebody who's above 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds. He's somebody who could really help you in run defense. He can match up against bigger wide receivers and tight ends in the slot, and he played it very, very well this week. So Quinyon Mitchell's playing well on the outside as well, but it really feels like the Eagles have nailed it with these 2 young defensive backs that they went back-to-back in the 2024 NFL draft. What about you? Most impressive?
Real quick on him, too, and this is, I think we need to just declare this the episode of the slot corner. This is just the slot corner love episode.
We're here.
I don't think there was a better fit in the NFL draft than him going there when they had already drafted Quinyon Mitchell, because over the last 2 years, slot coverage was pretty much the Eagles' giant Achilles heel. They were dead last by a mile in slot coverage grade over the last 2 years, and I was a firm believer with DeJean that he was not a safety. Do not put him at safety. He is a corner. One way you want to put him in the slot, fine. He's not a safety. Leave him at corner in some capacity. I know he was hurt in the preseason. He had obviously the leg injury that he got drafted with. But now it is no coincidence to me at all that he gets put in the starting lineup in the slot, and their defense looks a lot better. Because he's a great football player. He's a great tackler, like you mentioned. That's why he only gave up 3 catches for 3 yards. Great cover guy, great technique. I loved everything about him at Iowa. And when people were talking, oh, no, he's a safety move. No, he's not. He is absolutely not. You could put him in the slot because you have Quinyon. That's great. But that's where he needs to be. And he's already in two games into in a more extended role, made their defense a lot better. I'm going to roll it back, actually, to my most disappointing first real quick. On that offensive line, John Michael Schmitz, a guy last year who was drafted second round, big expectations. Was he the first center drafted last year? Or was somebody? I couldn't remember if he was the first one drafted or not.
No, I don't think so.
Wasn't
Tippin the
first? Oh, I think Tippmann went before. Tippmann went before him, and then Schmitz. But look, when he was in college, he was the best center in the country. Heavy outside zone kind of scheme at Minnesota. Really good athlete, but it just has not worked through a year and a half. All right, 36 centers since the start of last year have played at least 500 snaps. He has the 3rd lowest overall grade and the lowest pass blocking grade, and the run blocking isn't much better because honestly he's in a system that doesn't fit him. He's a zone scheme center playing in an offense under Brian Daboll that runs a lot of gap and a lot of more power schemes like that. I think he's a talented player. I don't think it's a great fit in this offense, and in pass protection he's just having a hard time against these bigger defensive tackles inside. It's been a consistent thing. So we've talked before about Evan Neal struggling, and now he's not even playing at all. John Michael Schmitz, kind of the same thing, kind of encapsulates just everything going on in that Giants offensive line that's really been a problem for him.
My most disappointing, Eagles on 3rd down, man. They're such a strange team. They rely so much on the tush push, and I feel like they build their conversions around it. And I can understand that a little bit, but I think they're taking it a little too far now at this point. This team's 1 for 13 on 3rd down yesterday. And they were 4 for 4 on 4th down, right? So when they get into that 4th and manageable, when it's basically 4th and QB sneak, they convert it. But 1 for 13 on third down. Like, it's got to be better than that.
They're just not a great drop back team,
right?
Other than AJ Brown getting go balls.
And that's right. That's not a real drop back offense.
Right.
That's like what we talked about with the Jags earlier in the show, where you cannot build your offense around just deep passes. And I think AJ Brown has saved them over the last couple of weeks because of what he is able to do. But their offense to me is just way too volatile right now, even with Saquon Barkley playing well and then being able to run the ball.
Right, and there's the most impressive guys. Trev, how many times do we talk about, there's a revenge game coming. There's always some revenge game coming,
sure,
right? And this one actually happened. I mean, Saquon, that's the thing that really, that's the story for the Eagles in this game, the Saquon Barkley revenge game. 17 carries, 176 yards is just ridiculous. Had a touchdown, had 2 other touchdowns stolen from him because of the way doing the tush, but he should have had 3 touchdowns in this game. And, well, that just happens. An 85.2 rushing grade. That's actually the 4th highest of his career.
Nice.
So, I mean, he came out angry in this game. He may not admit to it, and he may just be like, I'm just out here playing. But, no, he wanted to tee off in this one, and he absolutely did. So, for once, we actually got the execution of the revenge game, the Saquon Barkley revenge game. It'll forever be known as that. The only thing I have on that, he just should have had 2 more touchdowns, but that's the team you play on, I guess.
It is. I remember, I think it was with Miles Sanders. Jason Kelsey was on their podcast, and he was like, every time we would get it down, every time we would run Miles Sanders and we would get it to the 1-yard line, he said he would look at Sanders and he'd be like, I'm so sorry, man. You know what we're about to do. Like, you're not going to get the touchdown. We're going to QB sneak it, and we're going to make sure that we get in the end zone. So it's just a byproduct of playing on the Eagles. But when you have a great rushing grade, that's what PFF's for, right? To make sure that you get that recognition there. All right, this podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Cherry Bundy. You can see their products here that we have on the table. It's the performance drink that is fueling the athlete revolution. They got natural products with natural ingredients, no added sugars. Those tart cherries are the highest grouping of antioxidant fruit and vegetable in the world. It's beautiful. It means they got natural anti-inflammatory as well. Incredible benefits to that, okay? If you live any sort of an active lifestyle at all, it's reduced soreness, increased recovery. You got natural occurring melatonin to help with sleep. It also supports the immunity. Again, if you're any sort of active, even if it's just, like going out, enjoying the day, walking around the block a little bit, whatever. If you're a work from home person, you're trying to get a little bit of exercise, or if you're somebody that's hitting the gym or training for a marathon, whatever your level of fitness is, Cherry Bundy can really help you out. They're used by nearly 500 collegiate and professional sports teams, every single NFL team, 66 out of 67 Power 4 conference football teams. We got to figure out who that last one is because they got to get on the bandwagon over here. Products are available at Amazon, cherrybundy.com, retailers like Kroger, Publix, things like that. So check your local retailers and see if they have it there, but if they don't, you can go to cherrybundy.com. They got a lot of really great products. Some are just for recovery, some are for sleep, some are the protein based, like after a workout. So check it all out over at cherrybundy.com. I might have to crack one of these open for these last 3 games here. This is a long show that we got.
Go ahead. I mean, it won't ruin the decoration. If you need it, you need it.
All right. Well, okay. Let's start with Panthers Commanders.
There
right?
You go.
Commanders win this game 40-7. Let's talk about the top 5 graded players that we have here on the Washington Commanders for the big win. Gator great, edge rusher Dante Fowler Jr. with a 96.6 overall grade in this one. Got himself in the end zone as well. He looked so good returning that interception that I remember looking at you when we were watching this game the other day, and I was like, no, that can't be Dante Fowler Jr. Like, it's got to be like some sort of it's got to be a safety or something. Some side of defensive back. He was putting the moves on people.
He's been around a while. He's in shape. He's still in shape.
That's true. No, very clearly he is. Number 2 on the list, wide receiver Terry McLaurin with an 85.7. Number 3, guard Nick Allegretti with an 83.7. Cornerback Mike Sanders still. Slot corner, just to let you guys know. 82.7 overall grade in this one. And then Sam Cosmi at number 5 with an 80.5. Jaden Daniels goes out of this game with a rib injury, but it kind of sounded like he could have come back in this game. I didn't see any sort of report on it this morning, but it sounded like he could have come back from that rib injury.
I think Dan Quinn has a presser going right after we get off this show.
Okay. So we'll learn a little bit more about that, but felt like he could have gone back in the game had the game been really close, but it wasn't. Marcus Mariota, though, looked good in this one, 85.5. And then on the other side of things, when we look at Carolina, center Brady Christensen, their top graded player at an 85.2, tight end Jatavian Sanders with an 82.5, offensive tackle Ike Ekwonu with an 80.4, cornerback J.C. Horn with a 74.2, and then guard Robert Hunt with a 70.5, quarterback Andy Dalton in this one, another tough game for him, a 50.9. Before I crack one of these open and get a little cherry bunny here, what's your stat that told the story?
You're talking about last week we mentioned against the Ravens how you had the Commanders struggling in the run game. Jaden Daniels played pretty well. This game, you got ahead early with the Fowler pick six, and Daniels went out. But the run game stuck around, right? When you're talking about 5.8 yards per carry for the game. In the first half alone, 17 carries for 137 yards, and the team had a season-high 73.8 run blocking grade. Now, admittedly, there are going to be a lot of teams this year who have their best run blocking grade against the Carolina Panthers. But with Daniels getting hurt and Mariota coming in cold and having to manage the offense and got off, I'll get to Mariota in a second, he had to get into a rhythm a little bit. He saw his first few throws, again, coming off the bench cold. Didn't think he was playing today, especially so early. This Washington run game and the balance that they have is now, to me, again, it's what makes their offense dangerous. And I think he was smart to actually, I didn't think about this much in the offseason, but to bring in a guy like Mariota who I think makes sense for Cliff Kingsbury's offense. I think makes sense as the backup for Jaden Daniels. He's not as athletic as he used to be, obviously, with Tennessee and back at Oregon and all of that. But this run, he's still a threat, right, in the run game. And I've talked about how Daniels is freezing backside defenders in the run game, and guys have to hold, or you get the keeps on the read option. You saw a big keep on the read option on the play that I believe we think that Daniels got hurt on, or there was two consecutive plays that he took big hits where it's such a huge part of their offense. It's not just high-flying Jaden Daniels throwing go balls and getting it downfield. They have balance. He can throw it down the middle. When linebackers come up, he can keep it on read option. And Mariota, even though he's a little older and, again, not what he used to be, can run a similar type of offense, and then he can work the quick game and everything Cliff Kingsbury's got in the passing game too. So to me, it's Washington getting back to the run game, even without their starting quarterback, and being able to control this game at the line of scrimmage against a Carolina team who's struggled against it all year.
I'll go to the other side of things for the Commanders. Holding the Carolina Panthers to just 7 points and a couple of turnovers there. 90.6 coverage rate as a team. That was a single game high for them. 76.3 overall team defensive grade. They've played better as of late. Now, I think that when you look at their top graded games this season as a defense, all right, it was against Cleveland in week 5. It's against Carolina in week 7. Kind of bad offense merchants, if you will. The grades have not been great. In between that, they played the Ravens, and it was a 41 point something. I can't remember, but it was a 41 point something, and that's not great. So is the defense something that we're going to talk about as the top half of the league? No. But what is encouraging about this team is that even for as youthful as they are and how little experience they have together, and Dan Quinn being there in his first year, they're coming together and they are taking care of business against offenses that they should. Are they ready to match up against the best offenses in the NFL? No, not yet. But I do think that we're in a good spot for the Commanders and their defense moving forward. It goes into my most impressive, Dante Fowler Jr. stepping up in this one. I mentioned an interception, a sack as well, 3 pressures, 27.3% pass rush win percentage. When we looked at this defensive line for the Washington Commanders, we said, where is the pressure coming from? Who are we getting it from this season? And I don't think you can have Fowler go out there for 40, 50 snaps a game and say that you're going to get consistent production and a plus 20% pass rush win percentage. But, you have days like today. And I think that's great for the for the Commanders, and especially where they are going this season to establish themselves. And we were watching this game, you were like, hey, somebody tell me why the Commanders can't win the division this year. And overall defense might be a reason why. It might hold them back a little bit here, but with the Cowboys reeling,
I don't think
Giants in the same spot.
It's not going to take a ton of wins.
Right. It's not like the Eagles look like, absolute world beaters out there. It's going to take less wins than we thought to win this division, in my opinion. So I do agree with you where the Commanders aren't quite a complete team. They feel like the team that you want to bet on, that's at least going in the right direction and seem to get better every single week. Including this 40-7 win over the Panthers. What about you? Most impressive in this game?
Give me Marcus Mariota. Look, Daniels gets hurt. Everybody in Washington's freaking out. And what's wrong with him? Are his ribs broken? He's taking these hits like some said he would. Some of the scouts said he would when he was drafted. But he comes in after a few shaky first couple of throws, 18 of 23 for 205. 3 big-time throws. The last time, Trevor, he had 3 big-time throws was Week 10 of 2018. It's been a little minute since we've had Marcus Mariota in the spotlight.
Love to hear it.
And a 90.2 passing grade that so far before the Monday night games leads the NFL for the week. You want the most fun fact, unless you already saw my tweet about it 4 hours ago?
I didn't.
Who had the 2 highest passing grades in the NFL this week? I just gave you one, obviously.
Yeah, Marquez. Who had the other high? I don't know. Who was it?
About Jameis Winston.
Oh, jeez.
We're just taking it back to 2015. We got Marcus and
Oh,
Jameis.
the 2015 draft was always right.
The 2015.
Never wrong, just early.
A little early. Just a little early. They had the two highest
Almost
passing
10
grades.
years early.
Oh, yeah. The
Wow,
two
that
highest
draft was
passing
almost
grades.
10 years ago?
Yeah, 2015. Sure. 9.5.
That blew my mind.
You feel old
saying that
now?
out loud. Yes. No, I feel very old.
There you go.
As somebody who covered Jameis when he was in Tampa, yes, I feel very old.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Danny Heifetz tweeted this out. Works for the Ringer. Great friend of the show. This is about the Commanders' offense. Points per drive through 7 weeks in the 21st century. Love a good stat that we go in
The whole century. That's a good hot minute there.
Number 1, the greatest show on turf, the Rams in 2000.
Good team.
Number 2, the 07 New England Patriots team.
Pretty good team.
Pretty good team. Number 3, this year's Washington Commanders.
Pretty good team.
And then number 4 is 2018 Chiefs Mahomes' first season.
It's pretty good.
Insane company that the Commanders have there. My most disappointing is just the Carolina Panthers season. And I see that yours is their defense. No matter how you slice it, the team is not talented enough to compete. They're not. And the Carolina Panthers are going to get a top 3 pick in the NFL draft again this year. And they've got to continue to make more drastic changes on this team because they are not talented enough to win football games. They're just not. I wonder if we go back to Bryce Young at some point in this season. It feels like we're trending in that direction. We'll see what Bryce is when he comes back. But, man, it's ugly. It's ugly for Carolina right now. I feel for them. I feel for Panthers fans. The team is just not talented.
Yeah. I thought they would be better than this. Yeah, especially on defense. They have the lowest overall grade and pass rush grade on defense, second worst EPA per play allowed. I thought because of this defense and honestly some of the new pieces they brought in on offense have been pretty good. I think their offensive line has actually been passable for most of the year, and I think Deontay Johnson was a good idea of a pickup, and that's worked at times. But their defense for me, especially just their inability to make stops and pretty much do anything. I believe they're the lowest graded D-line in the league. It's just not working. And again, we've talked about it every week. That Derek Brown injury just killed him.
Correct.
He was the center of their defense.
Derailed, man. Not that I think the whole season would have been too much different, but, I mean, on a team that I just said is devoid of talent, for you to take away one of the few talented pieces that you had means a lot.
I really thought in the preseason, I'll be honest, I thought they at least had, if their defense had been playing like it did last year, which was actually passable. It wasn't the worst unit in the league. I really thought they could have won maybe 6 or 7 games and made some progress here, but it's working backwards. It's rough.
Chiefs Niners, surprise, surprise. Patrick Mahomes beats the San Francisco 49ers. Who would have seen it coming? Crazy. 28-18, this one in San Francisco. This was tough for San Francisco, dealing with a lot of injuries. We'll get to that in a second. But for the Chiefs who won this game, their top-graded player was tight end Noah Gray, a 90.1 overall grade in this one. Linebacker Leo Chanel next on the list with an 86.4. Offensive guard Joe Thuney with an 83.2. And then linebacker Nick Bolton getting in the action as well, 81.4. Offensive tackle Jawan Taylor with a 77.4 to round things out. Patrick Mahomes in this one, 71.5. Then we go over to San Francisco side of things. Tight end George Kittle continues to be a mainstay along their offense, 86.3. Offensive guard Aaron Banks with a 79.9. Offensive tackle Colton McKivitz with a 72.5. Edge rusher Nick Bosa, 72.1. Or 72.0, excuse me. And then cornerback Charvarius Ward with a 69.7. Brock Purdy in this game struggled. 54.6. What was the stat that told the story here, Dalton?
Brock Purdy caving under pressure for once.
Truly, it feels like it.
We really don't see it often. It was actually, for me, I thought a little bit jarring to see. 13 dropbacks under pressure, 2 for 8 for 2 yards and 2 interceptions, and a 23.8 passing grade. I think Steve Spagnuolo, he blitzed a decent amount. I don't think a crazy amount. He also, to me, what I saw, you just don't see the same look twice in a row. And I think he knew he had the advantage with all of the Niners' injuries at wide receiver now, and knowing his guys that I would argue that's the best secondary in the league. They just have so many guys. I think I just saw Jalen Watson fractured his ankle, which is unfortunate because he's a really good young player. But you've got Trent McDuffie. You've got Josh Williams. You've got it's safety Shamari Connor was really good in this game. I mean, there's just so many pieces in their secondary, and they made Brock Purdy hesitate, right? And when they make him hesitate in the pocket, and he's rotating safeties and doing simulated pressures and changing coverages, and you never know what's coming. Purdy under pressure had a lot of issues in this game, and you don't usually see him under pressure be flustered. You don't usually see the turnovers. You also don't usually see a team that doesn't have their top 3 wide receivers. I mean, it really a lot of it went against the Niners in this game, and it just eventually got in on Purdy being this usually so good under pressure, so good at improvising and dealing with what's in front of him, but this was too much for him to handle. I think he absolutely will bounce back in future weeks, next week, whenever. But against this defense, you need all your horses, and you need to be at the very top of your game. And the entire Niners passing game just was not there, obviously.
I'll go to the other side. I think the stat that told the story is just more kudos to Andy Reid and the type of offensive mind that he is. It's the Chiefs' offensive diversity, okay? You don't have a stud wide receiver one. Rashee Rice is not there. Juju Smith-Schuster's not even there, who had 130 yards for them the week before. Travis Kelce is not the receiver that he once was. You don't even have Isaiah Pacheco in this game anymore because of the injury, and he's sidelined for a while now. And what do they do? Well, 6 different players received 1 carry when it comes to the rushing game. 7 different players caught at least 1 pass, and 9 different players saw at least 1 target. They are more than, it feels like so many other teams, they are so willing to trust every single player on their roster. And of course, having Patrick Mahomes as the guy to throw them the ball makes things a lot easier because he's in the GOAT conversation. So it makes it possible that you could do things like this, but you also have an offensive coordinator that's not afraid to put players in position to go out there and make plays. So just the overall offensive diversity of, okay, sure, Tyreek Hill's not here anymore. We don't have Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce isn't what he used to be. We don't even have Juju Smith-Schuster. We don't have Isaiah Pacheco. Like, it doesn't matter.
And isn't it fitting that he keeps – I know they didn't have Smith-Schuster this week, but you know what? When Andy Reid, when he might need a weapon and Rashee Rice goes down, he gets a couple of guys, and Pacheco goes down too. He gets a couple of guys that he knows and trusts, right? You go get Juju Smith-Schuster. You go get Kareem Hunt, who doesn't have the step that he used to. But
Mecole Hardman.
Mecole Hardman.
Back on the team.
Keep going to old reliable at several of these spots. And you know what? He pretty much tells them, if you do your job, you'll get the football. And because 15 is going to get you the football. But Andy Reid, I mean, just I think you have to appreciate in a game, especially like this, in San Francisco, where you go, just one of the great offensive minds of all time. If not, I mean, does he start getting into the argument for number 1 eventually?
Who?
If we were talking about just the greatest offensive play callers ever. Where's Andy Reid? I mean,
high.
Do we start getting into maybe he's number 1?
Right. Yeah. No. I think that we're firmly in that world now. We are firmly in that world of Andy Reid getting that recognition for what he's doing. But look, the Chiefs are undefeated. Last undefeated team in the NFL, I believe. This past game gave me more faith in them moving forward than any of the previous 5 that they won, just because of how they were able to win. How much can you take? This whole season has been, how much can you take away from this Chiefs offense? And can Patrick Mahomes still do it for you?
Doesn't matter because it's defense too.
You have the offensive line to be able to do it, and then you got Steve Spagnuolo, who I tweeted this out yesterday. I know that assistant coach has their own award, like there's assistant coach of the year. Steve Spagnuolo's got a case to be named just regular head coach of the year. And I know it's not going to happen because they separate the awards for a reason, but it always feels less. Right, it just feels less. Assistant coach of the year, whatever. Put Steve Spagnuolo in the conversation for coach of the year.
And for all those young kids that they have, and my most impressive, I'll start with because they just have got a bunch of young, versatile guys. I'll go with Leo Chenal in this game. Feels like every time we do a Chiefs game, I just pick a different one of these young defensive players. I think it's finally the second time.
Joys of doing a Chiefs game.
I mean, 88.4 overall, 92.5 coverage grade. 3 stops, a forced incompletion, a forced fumble, had a pressure as a pass rusher, even though he missed the tackle on Purdy, could have had a sack, was darn near there. This is just another example of a guy who Steve Spagnuolo can do everything with. He's at linebacker, so he can cover, he can go off the edge, he can blitz through the A-gap. It does not matter. And he just has so many guys like this. The Chiefs value versatility on defense more than anything. Chenal all over the place. Shamari Connor all over the place. Trent McDuffie inside outside.
He's got to be a good football player.
I mean, and yeah, if you're a good player who just has, I mean, and all of them have wicked high football IQs. I mean, if you look at his defense and the number of things they rotate and the blitz calls and all the different, they're not just a team that lines up in cover 3 every play. We know this. It's a different look every single play and all the complicated stuff. And then week to week, what he's game planning every week is different. Like, they have a bunch of young kids with such high football IQs, and they're such movable pieces it doesn't even matter. It felt like it used to be with the Chiefs defense. Well, how do you beat them? Well, you probably run right at them, right? Out physical them. We've seen like Derrick Henry used to beat him, things like that. Right now, it's not. You just have to be better than them because they have a different game plan, and the versatile players like a Chanel who's wicked physical. At any point, he could tackle George Kittle, or he can run down the field and force a fumble in coverage or do things like that. I mean, there's just so many guys like this on this defense that they're just chess pieces. They're not just guys who are like, okay, you plug this gap and you play deep third. They have so many chess pieces on their defense that Spagnuolo has to work with. They can play any style of football they want. It doesn't matter. It's why they could beat a high-flying team like the Bengals, or they could beat a physical team like the Niners or the Ravens. I think you have to put them in the argument. I mean, it feels like to me every time I talk about the Chiefs' defense with somebody, they go, well, they're pretty good, but they're not the best defense in football. Why not?
They're a top 3 defense in the NFL.
Easily. And honestly, for as many things as they do, and you still have a Hall of Famer in there at defensive tackle, I go, why aren't they considered the best defense in football?
Pittsburgh's playing really well. The Ravens, especially their front's playing really well. But I
think Pittsburgh for me might be the only other one.
Right? Yeah. The Chiefs are if they're not one, they're two.
Yeah. But it feels like, I don't know, when I talk to, maybe they're just not the ball knowers of the world, where they're like, they're okay. They got some. I'm like, no, this is an elite unit that shuts people down every week.
Yep. I agree with you completely. My most impressive, look, I know he got trucked by Patrick Mahomes at the goal line, and that's admittedly not a great look. Malik Mustafa, I think, played well in this game. I think he's just been playing well overall. His PFF grades are a little bit lower in this one, but they ask him to do a lot. I think he's playing free safety. He's playing in the box. He'll come up and hit you all the times. He'll come from depth and make tackles to the line of scrimmage. Just the tone-setting play in which he plays with, and the play style and the play speed that he has. I'm always so impressed with Malik Mustafa whenever I turn on his 49ers tape. So to me, he was the most impressive in this one. Most disappointing is just the overall Niners injuries. We talked about it with the Los Angeles Rams. You get Deebo Samuel out due to an illness. Ayuk might have an ACL tear. That's the early rumor. Certainly hope not. And McCaffrey obviously has not played this season. You got Juwan Jennings missing this game due to a hip injury. Hufanga's out. Javon Hargrave is out, going back a couple of weeks as well. And so this is a team that's just really beat up. They got a lot of really talented players, and they're really beat up. And that's what's most disappointing to me, because I don't feel like the 49ers are. It feels like the 49ers window is closing against their will. And it's just some bad luck injuries that I think are really going into this for them, that we're now seeing some struggles on both sides of the ball for them. But most disappointing for you?
Same thing.
Okay.
I actually think with the caliber of players that are hurt for them, we still haven't seen Christian McCaffrey this year. If Ayuk is done for the year, you talk about Javon Hargrave being done for the year. Talanoa Hufanga, who I've talked about as a big X factor for their defense. It makes you really, really doubt the Niners can get back to the Super Bowl or win it, let alone win it. I mean, those are such huge names. It's especially Ayuk to me. He's their best.
Well, yeah,
he's their best pure receiver. I mean, you just paid him $30 million a year, and for good reason. He's one of the best receivers in football. It's tough. It's tough this time around. They're going to be. First of all, before we even get to Super Bowl, I mean, they're going to be gutting it out to win this division. Honestly, it's not a bad division. Did Seattle pull back ahead of them now, or are the Niners still tied for first? I forget the standings. I didn't look at the standings this morning. But either way, it's going to be tight in that division. And then if they're trying to win the NFC with all these injuries, it's starting to get harder to see how they're going to do it.
Last game, we'll touch on this one. It's Thursday night, so there's been a lot of talk about what happened on Thursday night. Broncos and Saints. Broncos won this game 33-10. Let's look at the top 5 graded players here from this game. Denver, linebacker Cody Barton at the top of the list with a 93.2. Incredible game for him. And linebacker Justin Sternad with an 85.6 there at number 2 as well. Just linebacker Bash Brothers at the top of the list here. Offensive tackle Garrett Bowles with an 83.1, guard Ben Powers with a 79.5, and then cornerback Jaquan McMillan with a 78.4. Bo Nix got the dub in this one, but 59.1 PFF grade for the New Orleans Saints. Linebacker Anthony Orji with a 91.9, and then big drop-off. Cornerback Marshawn Lattimore next on the list, 77.4. Wide receiver Cedric Wilson Jr. with a 71.5, and then safety Jordan Howden with a 67.1, number 5. Defensive end Carl Granderson rounding things out with a 62.9. Spencer Rattler in this game struggled. 42.1 overall grade. We'll be pretty quick with this one, but stat that told the story here, Dalton.
Look, the Saints just don't have the horses, okay? 7 of their 11 offensive opening day starters were out of this game. You have all that's left is their 2 tackles and Alvin Kamara and Foster Moreau. I mean, they don't have it. They're not going to win with Spencer Rattler and their entire interior gone, and A.T. Perry and other receivers who really weren't supposed to be on the field a whole lot this year. The Saints, look, a 50 offensive grade in this game, 55.5 over the last 3 weeks. I feel for Spencer Rattler because he's out there with not a whole lot to work with. And, we know Rashid Shaheed is done for the year. Taysom Hill's been out of the lineup for a while. The Saints offensively, that team that they ran out there on Thursday is not going to win very many, if any, ball games. That's just not right now. That's not an NFL offense.
And to me, the stat that told the story is they're going through their injuries. Obviously, they got a lot of things to worry about on the offensive side of the ball. The defensive line, we didn't really think that it'd be too much of a strength of this team. Coverage was supposed to be, right? Marshawn Lattimore, Alontae Taylor, you got Paulson Adebo, you got Tyrann Mathieu, you got Jordan Howden, right? Like, your secondary should have been a strength of your team. 46.2 coverage grade against the Denver Broncos. If the Saints don't have their secondary, they have nothing. So that was truly the stat that told the story to me, is if you would have said, okay, at least the Saints have this. They did not against the Broncos. And that's why you see 33-10, because one of the few strengths that they have on their team through all these injuries was not able to play well. So to me, that was definitely a stat that told the story. Most impressive is Cody Barton. We talked about him being number 1 on that list. 88.5 coverage grade, 1 catch for 5 yards allowed, a forced incompletion, almost had an interception as well, had that dropped interception, as well as 8 tackles, which was tied for the most on the team. So hell of a day for Cody Barton, who was really able to showcase what great ability that he has in coverage. Most impressive for you, Dalton?
I'm gonna put the last 2 pieces here together. The Broncos run game. Look, we talked way earlier about Drake May needing the pieces around him to kind of help him out some. Bo Nix didn't have to do a whole lot in this game because the Broncos run game was on it. If you take out kneel downs at the end of the game, they had 6.9 yards per carry, 33 minutes of time of possession, almost 3 yards before contact per attempt. You saw the 2 offensive linemen in the top 5 there. Season high for the team, 81.6 run blocking grade. They lined up and they ran right at the Saints, and the Saints didn't have much of an answer. And I'll roll into the most disappointing. Last year's first-round pick, Brian Brzee. He's a decent pass rusher. He's kind of a smaller, more athletic guy. Just nothing in run defense, and maybe figuring going into year 2 it would get a little bit better. But a 29.2 run defense grade for the year, that's the second lowest among any qualified D tackles. So Saints not stopping the run. Now you mentioned secondary struggling. You start to wonder if the defense is kind of demoralized with the way the offense is going. It is it's a problem. It's a problem all the way around they have in New Orleans, and I don't really know how they get out of it, to be honest with you.
No, it's even when they get healthy, you wonder what the real version of this team was, because they played 2 very bad teams in the Cowboys and the Panthers to start the year. And then even before their injuries started to mount up, they weren't playing too well. So I don't even know what the real version of the Saints are, but it's hard to find answers there. Disappointing for me. The run game, Alvin Kamara, 7 carries for 10 rushing yards. Kamara had 7 targets, caught 6 of them for only 14 yards. That's just not going to get it done. But like you said, there's nobody else out there. They're keying on Alvin Kamara the entire time. They know that if the Saints are going to win the ball game, it's only through Kamara. And when you are one-dimensional like that, it's very tough.
Even completely healthy with the struggles we thought they'd have in the trenches preseason, I felt like their margin of error was very thin.
Was thin, right?
It was thin, and now it's tough, and it's considering some of their salary cap stuff and things behind the scenes, it could be tough for a while, at least into next year too, because it's a mess. They pushed off for so long the Drew Brees the Drew Brees punishment for pushing his salary cap and all that and all the dead money, and this is not right now. The Saints are not where you want to be as an organization.
They're in a tough spot. There's no doubt about it. There we go. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us for the show, however long you were watching. If you want to get all these premium stats yourself, you can go get one at PFF.com, get a PFF Plus subscription. You can see all the premium stats there, but also if you're into fantasy football, if you're into the NFL draft, free agency, all that good stuff, PFF Plus subscription has you covered all year long. We give you all access to all sorts of data and analysis when it comes to not only how your team is performing, but how your team can get better as well. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema. Thank you guys so much for watching the PFF grade release show for Week 7. We'll see you right here, same time for Week 8. See you guys then.